presented by Dano's Seasoning. Yum yum, get you some.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to the Sun Belt Syndicate, the NFL Draft Special. We've got some special guests with us tonight, as you can currently see on screen. As always, brought to you in part by collegefootballdogs.com, part of Dawg TV, and also our presenting sponsor down below, Dano's Seasoning. Use promo code DOGGOS at checkout to get you a little affiliate bump for both you and us, actually, as we go through this tonight. Obviously, TJ, we are back at it again. Excited to talk some football after a few weeks off from the football show, right?
Yeah, man. It's been a lot not having football. Like you don't realize how difficult life is until you only have basketball to watch. And here's the other thing. I know you guys are paying. You guys watch baseball and everything. I watch some of it, right? But I'm a football head to my core. And so, and then after March Madness and the national championship is just NBA, which is fine. Nothing's like football. So, yes, welcome everybody back.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you can see, we have 4 on the screen with us tonight. We have 2 of the national columnists for collegefootballdogs.com. These guys are great at what they do. There's a reason they're in the positions they're in. So up top, we've got Dominic Ambrose, a national columnist. And Dominic, tell the people which focus you will have conference-wise going into next season.
Okay, coming up to the season, I'll be covering the ACC and Notre Dame. So looking forward to it. A lot of interesting games on the horizon.
Nice.
Absolutely. And your fandom connected to the Sun Belt, I'll let you explain that because that's where I actually met you in Boone at the Southern Miss game.
Yeah. Actually, at that game, I had come up to meet a friend of mine who's a Southern Miss faithful, and he had an extra ticket, and I jumped at the chance because, kind of like TJ, I mean, football's become life for me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Nice.
Watching it live is a lot better than watching it on TV.
That is a fact.
Very true. Absolutely. And our other national columnist, he's got JC on his screen, but his name is Jonathan Manning. Be sure to look out for him. He is going to be our recruiting expert, and he's also jumping in and keeping track of all the portal news. As all of us know, that stuff has gotten just crazy.
I was going to say, your job must be very difficult if you're keeping track of the portal moves. That thing is jumping.
Ton of names.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Sun Belt attachment for you, Jonathan, is South Alabama. It's maybe hard for some people to see, but that is kind of what's behind you on screen there as well, right?
It's been South Alabama since 2010 when we got a team. Watched them go from nothing to FBS level.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've come up. They've got a newer stadium since then. One of the best in the Sun Belt as far as new nice features is concerned. That's for sure. I know people like to hate on some of that smaller aspect, but let's be real. They weren't filling up that other one. So it's nice to see them have their. What was that?
I said it's a lot better than Rad People.
Yeah. That's a nice way of saying it. That's for sure. We've got our first comment of the night coming in from Sydney Bernstein saying FSU got hosed. Yeah. I mean, TJ, touch on that real quick. Since it's the first comment we see here.
Yeah. No. I get it. I understand the sentiment behind FSU getting hosed. Assuming we're going back to playoffs and that whole deal in terms of placement should have been in the Final Four. I agree to an extent, but I also disagree. Obviously, they won enough. They did enough to get in, right? But when you don't have your starting quarterback and he is about 85% of your offense, you are not the same football team. And let's just be honest. They struggled to even beat Louisville, right? And that was, ACC Conference Championship. And again, let's be honest with ourselves. ACC was not tough last year and really hasn't been outside of Clemson and Carolina. And, again, FSU last year, there really wasn't a whole lot to hang your hat on if you were an ACC football fan. So that said, sorry, Dominic. That said,
Not a problem.
When you look at it holistically, yeah, they did get hosed, and they should have. All things considered, they deserve that fourth spot based on record and based on what you've done overall. But if we're going by the eye test, which is what we do, right? Everybody here saw FSU struggle against Louisville. They would have gotten absolutely demolished against any of the Final Four. Michigan, Georgia, Alabama, it wouldn't have made a difference. So, yeah, they by record, yes, again, but what we saw against Louisville, and then also them not having their starting quarterback, there's no way. There was no way. The committee made the right decision.
Yeah, I just think that when you look at it and you say they have the same argument that a group of five team has, exactly, sure. Right? Because you think about the group of five team saying we can only play the schedule in front of us. We've seen in the past UCF do it twice, go undefeated, and they didn't even get a shot, right? So this is, in a way, as a group of five fan, you kind of liked it because you're like, hey, finally they're getting a little taste of their own medicine. You're saying something here is not good enough even though you're undefeated. You've been telling us that for years. So in a way, it's like, okay, that's going to help force a change here, which, I mean, I guess at that point it technically was – actually, was the 12-team playoff approved before that, or did that come after?
Yeah, it had already been approved, right?
Okay, yeah. All right. Mm-hmm. But that just makes it like hammers it home. Like, there should be more teams that get access.
Absolutely. We need 12 teams. Well, I don't know if we need 12. We certainly needed 8. 12 might be a bit too many. I think all of us here probably knows every year who the top 6 or 8 teams are, who deserve to be there, who doesn't. That said, though, I'm not mad about 12 teams. You give me more football, I'm going to tell you yes, absolutely. So I'm not mad about 12 teams. And like you said, all it takes, I mean, listen, any given Saturday, right? I mean, you get on the field, you line up a 12 seed beat a 2 seed. Now we're looking at something completely different in terms of the landscape of college football. So, you're talking about Cinderella teams. You're talking about teams, going back to that 07 App State Michigan game, not giving these guys a chance. And it'll be on a lesser scale, obviously. But, when you line up on Saturdays, you never know what you're going to get. So all it takes is one ball to bounce one way or one injury or one something, and you got yourself a whole different ballgame. So.
Very, very true. Yeah. It's going to be interesting, especially with what we just talked about with what JC is going to be covering. Dominic will be covering this as well. The transfer portal for all these teams. Obviously, more of the group of 5 guys get stolen away than guys moving down, but obviously both still happen. So that's going to change the dynamic. The fact that there's unlimited transfers, which TJ loves, by the way, that he loves that rule.
Oh my God. Unlimited transfers drives me up the wall. I mean, if I wasn't already bald, I'd be bald because of that. It's insane, bro. Like, come on. I get it. We talked about it, and I don't want to beat a dead horse. One time is fine. Second time, we need a justification. Mm-hmm. Speaking of, what's the kid transferring from Colorado? Amani?
Which one?
The corner. I know, right?
Amani McLean.
Yeah, McLean. He's, I saw his little Twitter or Facebook or I guess X message saying he wants to go play for a team that's going to develop him. Kid could barely get eligible, right, in terms of GPA. Secondarily, he's left 2 schools already because he didn't find it to be a good fit. Yet he wants to be developed. And also didn't even watch the minimum amount of hours required to even get on the field. Like, here's the thing about watching game film. It's monitored, right? They all have the tablets. Just turn it on. You don't even have to watch it. Just you're so lazy you can't even just turn it on and sit it somewhere and just do something else. I'm sorry, you get no sympathy from me. So
would you have had success with that back in your day, TJ, if they had the tablet viewing for the play calls?
Oh, I watched film religiously because I played in the slot. And those linebackers and safeties, that hurts. To not know coverage and to run around in the middle of the field and not know coverage and get your face knocked off, I'm cool with that. I did not want that problem.
Yeah, that makes sense. We got the Big Ten backers joining us. Speaking of Michigan, as you can see in their little profile picture there, they dressed up as that Michigan film crew. I don't want anybody to forget that because that's a great troll job as they traveled around the Big Ten throughout much of the season last year. And I know they're going to do it again this year coming up. They're also asking, who's the first Sun Belt taken? And we are going to get into that. And I kind of asked two of the guys here before we started, and then I'll let them expand on that. But we'll jump in here and give a little background history on what some of the Sun Belt has done historically as far as the NFL draft is concerned. And I realize there's a lot of little tiny icons in this, but the first thing to see comes in about 74. It's the yellow one. It's going to be Southern Miss with 116 players drafted all time into the NFL, far and away the most of any now Sun Belt school, because almost all of those were done before they were actually a Sun Belt school.
I was going to say, does it count because they weren't in the Sun? I mean, I guess we have to give them their flowers, but does it count?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those weird things, right? You'd have to split it up into all kinds of different ways to.
Well, I guess if it would count for us, because we weren't Sun Belt before this, so I guess it has to count for them. So
yeah, that's true. And when you're trying to keep everything straight, it's just easier that way. At this point, surprise number 2, at least for me, Texas State comes in at number 2 with 39 players drafted into the NFL. I mean, I think all 4 of us know historically Texas State was better at the lower level and then moved up to FBS. And besides this season has struggled pretty well. But they have had some talent, as pretty obvious, with putting almost 40 players into the NFL. After that, we've got JC's favorite team, Troy, putting in 35 players. App State closely behind at 33. Let's see, the Cajuns have put in 18 players, and we got a couple teams here with quite a bit less, although I guess JMU's got 16, which is very impressive considering they've had all of 2 seasons at the FBS level at this point. Yeah, Georgia Southern, 15 total. We have Coastal Carolina putting in 9, ULM putting in 7, ODU with 5. Georgia State rounds out the 14-team Sun Belt Conference with 3 players drafted all time. I don't think I've left anybody out. Like I said, if I did, somebody in the comments can let us know. But
you leave out Arkansas State? Is that 53?
Oh, you're right. I did skip over them. Yep, you are correct. So they are second before Texas State. Yeah. And that's a little bit of a surprise with how.
I was going to say, that's actually surprising.
Mm-hmm.
But historically, right when App State was coming into the conference, they were kind of the team to beat. I guess, JC, at that point, the divisions hadn't really been split up yet. I think the Sun Belt was just all one big thing. I don't think they had it East-West back then, unless.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. We had Idaho and New Mexico State or whatever the hell it was back in that day. We had the G5 version of the Big Ten and what it's about to do, going from coast to coast. I guess Idaho's
that is about to be madness.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be insane.
All for it.
Yeah, I am too. But I mean, they're going to realize, going to, from USC all the way over to Michigan. That's
going to Penn State too.
Say again?
Going to Penn State.
I was just going to say Penn State all the way over here with me on the East Coast. I mean, that's going to be nuts, man. That's something
Big
to
Ten.
watch.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Big Ten backers are saying, yes, you have to count it. We are going to count Oregon and USC, of course, as the Big Ten. And then Benjamin is letting us know we jumped over Arkansas State. We did. That was a bad graphic thing because they put maroon and red right
beside each other.
It just bled through, and I went right over it. Actually, I skipped over Marshall too. I think with the green, they had 44 players. So man, I missed 2 right there. So Texas State is 4th all time, not 2nd. So there, we'll correct that for the people that are like listening to this later, going, "What the hell?"
I was going to say Randy Moss is somewhere punching the air.
Randy Moss and Byron Leftwich too.
Yeah, and Byron Leftwich, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What is App State's in the last 10 years? I bet the majority.
quite a bit. I mean, you go back to, you're talking Kendall Lamb, you're talking, oh God, Daniel Kilgore was no, he played with me, so we were
more than 10
about then.
Yeah. Well, we put a couple of wide receivers. I mean, to be honest, they have a number of guys in the NFL now and over the past several years, but not all of them got drafted either. Some of them made it as preferred free agents, which we're going to see quite a bit of this year too, I believe, as well. Andrew Anderson saying hello to the show. What's going on, Andrew? Thanks for joining us tonight. Yeah, and the Vandals and the Aggies. Yeah, with Rutgers and Maryland joining the Big Ten. But, Coastal definitely has a few.
So how many teams are going to be in the Big Ten? Like, what are we looking at? I mean, is this like a mega conference?
20, something like that?
Jesus Christ, bro. Like, what?
Yeah. They're at 14 right now, which is the size of the Sun Belt. But, they're about to add
USC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon.
Jeez. Yep, 18. They're saying 18. So, take the 14 they've got now and add the 4 teams you just named. That's an 18-team conference. And let's be honest, they're not done yet.
No. And essentially, they won't have to in terms of strength of schedule. They almost have no non-conference games. Like, they'll almost start the season with everything on the line.
Yeah. I mean, it is must-see TV in a lot of ways, but then you're going to have those matchups where you've got USC against Rutgers. I don't think anyone cares.
No,
I don't think even if Rutgers is having a good year.
Yeah, essentially USC versus Rutgers is basically them playing a non-conference game. Yeah, that'll essentially be the equivalent, right? I mean,
unless the Big Ten decides to just say we're limiting conference games to like 8 and do it rotationally.
Okay, well, yeah, I guess they could do that, because what I'm thinking in my mind is like, even if there's, they do 9 and 9 or whatever, split it up however they want to split it up, or just make it just one free for all. My first initial thought is like, you can't lose a game. Like maybe you lose 1 or 2 because we're going to that 12-team setup now. But
that's true. Yeah.
But you essentially can't afford to lose more than 1 conference game, and you're out in the Big Ten.
That's a lot of different conferences. Once you lose more than 1 in conference, you're done. It's
I
think it's going to pressure the non-Big Ten SEC teams more because of that strength of schedule.
Yeah, it's gonna have you're right. That'll have a major effect on the SEC because they won't get a chance to. When they play those Big Ten those Big Ten games, losing to one of them is almost devastating. Yeah, because their strength of schedule in the Big Ten will be so much higher.
And the SEC too, because they're adding Texas and Oklahoma.
So, but they're not adding 18. Jesus.
I mean, they like both those conferences. They can almost afford to lose a game and still make the playoffs. And the ACC and Big 12, you're going to have to go undefeated.
Yeah. ACC doesn't have a shot if they don't go undefeated. Essentially, I mean, Florida State, Florida State, Clemson, and maybe North Carolina are only. I mean, I'm trying to think ACC. Notre Dame, but I
don't know. Louisville is going to be one of the top guys over there.
They've got a hell of a defense. I don't know about them offensively.
Yeah.
They just lost one of their linemen too. Louisville did to the portal.
Yeah, I know they had a great defense, and I mean they showed us their defense. Like obviously against Florida State, I mean they struggled without a quarterback, but all year long Louisville played excellent defense.
Oh yeah,
as long as he stay healthy, he's going to get the ball to Colin Lacey, which is from South.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. Like you said though, Big 12 and ACC, they've got uphill climbs for sure.
Yeah, and SMU jumping into the ACC. That's
I didn't know that.
Yeah, SMU, Cal, and Stanford are jumping into ACC this year.
Yeah, and the craziest part about the whole thing is geography is one thing. We've talked about that. We kind of just talked about it in this show. But SMU is covering their own costs until how many, Dominic or JC, do you guys remember how many years it is? It's literally years worth of covering their own costs.
I don't remember a specific number.
I heard it a while ago. I don't remember it though.
I think it's like 4 or 5 years they're floating themselves with money, which is insanity. I mean, you've got a group of 5 teams that would love to offer that same deal, and they can't because they don't have the money backing them to do it.
Yeah.
Yep. Insane the fact that they came in and said, hey, to help you take us, you don't have to pay them. And
that's to make it more appealing for you. We'll pay our own costs. How about that?
Yeah.
And absolutely. I mean, now in fairness, if SNU had never had the death penalty, they probably would have never been at the group of 5 level anyway. Right. I mean,
that's true.
They were one of the best teams on the field for a length of time back in the day. So yeah. And maybe it was because they cheated to do it, but you know,
you think?
Big Ten baggers are saying SMU has more money than the Vatican. Them, Liberty, all these schools are just playing with money we'd love to have. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, just send me a couple 100,000 and I'll be fine. I'll get out your hair.
Yeah. Send us money to fund this venture continuously.
Right.
We'll be happy.
There you go.
Yep. Army's entering the American too. That's a good fit. I think that's kind of where Army needs to be, especially with Navy being in there too. All right. I don't know if you guys noticed the graphic, and I have to give a shout out because I found these on Twitter. These are not my graphics here. It's called Matchup Tracker or sources from Winsipedia. Someone put this together. First round draft picks all time, FBS. I'll save you a quick note. There's only 4 teams in the Sun Belt who've ever had a first round draft pick. There's 10 teams without any ever zeros. Those teams would be App State, Arkansas State, Coastal, Georgia Southern, Georgia State, JMU, Louisiana, ODU, South Alabama, and Texas State. So the 4 that we need to talk about, Southern Miss has 4. Don't get all the 4s confused. Marshall has 3 first-round draft picks that they've ever had. Troy has
one of those.
Yeah, I know, right? Troy has 2, and let's see what the last team. Can anyone guess the last team? The only one I haven't named. If I had to tell you that this team had a first-round draft pick, I'm sure that the team that actually has it would have been at the bottom of your list. Think bottom of the conference here with the last several years.
Not the Warhawks or whatever seriously?
Yep, ULM has had a first-round draft pick.
Do we know who? I need to Google that.
I did see it. I did look at it because I thought the same thing. Yeah, you look it up while we talk. What was that?
Wasn't it a lineman that the Dolphins picked quite recently?
Was it recent too?
Let's see.
Chad's joining the chat. We had Chad on the baseball show. What a guy. That is Dominic's friend that he was referring to when we were in Boone taking in the App State Southern Miss game. Oh Lord, 2 Doms on one show. Odds of a Sunbelt team making the expanded playoff last year. That's a good thing. We'll see what TJ has to say first. Then that is a great question. I'll actually just leave it up on the screen actually while we do that.
Judas Douse is the only first-round draft pick from ULM in the. Let's see. Oh no, this is MLB.
Oh.
Huh.
All right. Well, we'll begin talking about the odds of a Sunbelt team making it to the playoff next year before we move on with the NFL draft stuff. Let's see. Dominic, have you had enough time to think it over and think if a Sunbelt team could land themselves in a playoff 12-team playoff spot for next season, as soon as next season?
You know, I always love to think anything is possible, and I like cheering or having that underdog story. And the Sun Belt would be the underdog, aside from like the App State games against Michigan and all. But if JMU continues, albeit with a new coach, you know,
yeah. And honestly, that would be insanely impressive because of that, right? They have roster turnover. They have a brand new coach. they've done it for 2 years in a row, which has continued to be successful in their first 2 years, and everyone keeps saying they're never going to be able to keep it up. I was one. I thought they were going to fall off this year, to be honest with you. I mean, I think they were going to be terrible. I thought they'd kind of be just over middle of the pack is kind of where I think I had them placed, and they exceeded my expectations.
Yeah, that they I mean, if like you said, if they can continue this, it'll be impressive for a lot of reasons. First, obviously, longevity, right? Doing it over 3 years, but doing it, like you said, Dom, with the amount of roster turnover that they've had and their coach basically taking half the freaking Sun Belt with him. I mean, Jesus Christ, he recruited everybody and their grandmother to go up to Indiana to play football.
Yep, he took not only his own roster at JMU, like you said, he was taking players from Troy, he was taking players from Texas State. I think he took at least one.
He's got one from South Alabama, one from Texas A&M. I mean, Texas State. He's got Jesus, I can't remember. It's like 2 from Coastal that have gone. You know.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and by the way, ULM's draft pick Trey Caldwell, a defensive back in 2007.
Okay, so it's kind of recent then.
Yeah.
Well, interesting. I just would have never picked that school to have a first-round draft pick. But, I mean, we've seen guys from like the D2 level jump up and get a high draft pick. So it's not crazy when you really think about it. But the fact that 10 teams have gone over and ULM is one of the ones with the first round is very surprising to me. JC, let's get your thoughts on a possible Sun Belt entry into the new expanded playoff for next year. Or if you don't think there will be one, then you can say that as well.
I just don't see how anyone other than Tulane or Memphis gets it. But as far as Sun Belt goes, Texas State could come in and shock everybody. App State maybe. With Signetti leaving JMU, I really don't think JMU can. But mostly as far as Group of 5, it's really just Memphis, maybe Boise State, and Tulane.
Yeah, I don't disagree because they have the national media is behind those teams, right? They've been covering them, so they're going to favor them. Again, Big Ten backers said, anyone have big-time Power 4 games? Yes. Actually, a couple weeks ago, TJ and I went over the schedule release, and, we went over, I think it was Texas State, TJ, that we said had the schedule in front of them, that if they won all their games, there'd be no doubt that they would be a playoff team to us. Now, that's not going to be easy. I believe they had 2 Power 5 program or Power 4 programs, as Big Ten backers have reminded me. It's Power 4 now instead of Power 5.
They've got I just pulled it back up. They've got hold on. They've got Arizona State and Baylor. No, not Baylor. I'm sorry. Arizona State and looks like that's it.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't. Oh, you know who it was? I think Arkansas State. Pull up Arkansas State while I'm talking about this because I believe they were the school that had 2 Power 5 programs. Now, that one's going to be harder to do, but they have this guy named Jalen Rayner over there who might be one of the best quarterbacks in all of the Sun Belt next year. He's not on this NFL draft board, but if he continues playing the way he has, what was it? Didn't they put up a 77-point game?
Oh, yeah. So Arkansas State has Iowa State, and they also have Michigan. Good luck.
You win those 2. Iowa State's not going to be a terribly big win.
No. Iowa State I'm not concerned about, but Michigan? Eesh.
Yeah. You're hoping that they catch them early before they get rolling because, maybe I feel like football's less of this, but like whenever you're rolling off a championship, they always say you have that little hangover that happens. TJ doesn't know what those are like. He's won 3 straight national championships, so they don't know what those are like. But,
I know what a hangover is like. Just not from football.
That's true. Okay, yeah, fair point. Very fair point.
Arkansas State has them back-to-back. That's going to be tough. They've got Michigan on September 14th and then Iowa State on the 21st. So I obviously predict them losing to Michigan State, but I will say Iowa State is very, very winnable. Say it again?
Yeah, Michigan. Not Michigan State, right, TJ? You said
Michigan. Sorry, Michigan, not Michigan State.
Yeah, you had Iowa State in Michigan. Yeah, I can see why.
But winnable, certainly Iowa State is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they don't have either. I know they don't have Michigan at home. They don't have Iowa State at home, do they?
No.
No. Okay.
They're both on the road, which is also tough.
Right. Yeah. Not going to be easy. Okay. So I think this is
quick,
kind of
Dom, going back to your last slide. I know we were talking about first round draft picks for each school. Honorable mention: App State 2009. Dexter Jackson, second round draft pick, very high second round draft pick. Tampa Bay.
Yep.
Don't forget ran a 4.2, I think 4.29 or 4.28 in the combine. So yeah. Not a first round, but I do think he deserves. If you're listening, Dex, I got you. I do think he deserves some honorable mention in that regard. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And honestly, let's be real. He probably wasn't the best wide receiver. The speed helped put him in there.
Sure.
He wasn't a bad wide receiver. I'm not saying that.
No, much better punt returner than he was receiver.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Like he could not be. I mean. Go back and watch the two plays where he just broke the field open in Michigan for any more confirmation of anything there that you need to see. Ben does mention that 2026 Iowa State does return the trip to Arkansas State. So eventually they will get them at home. So I knew, when I saw and heard Iowa State, I was like, that's not a big enough program where you do like a 1-0. You've probably got to deal with them. So, yeah, that makes sense. This is kind of the same thing we've already talked about, just shown in a more readable form here. So we will move on. We'll just get started right away. And I'm going to let JC start us off with a guy he saw quite a bit of last year named Carter Bradley out of South Alabama. I'll be honest, far and away the quarterback that is most likely to be drafted. I think there is still some question whether he does get drafted. I've seen everything from preferred free agent to, I don't know, what's the grade that they've got on him, like possibly a 6th, 7th. So, JC, what are your thoughts maybe on where he gets taken, but just how he is as a player as well?
If he goes 6th or 7th, I'd love it. But over the last 2 years, I've never seen him justify himself as a drafted quarterback. I'm not saying he's bad at all, but compared to everybody in the country, I'd choose Michael Pratt over him. I hate saying that, but Michael Pratt over him and Sam Hartman, which are both floating right there at drafted, undrafted, right there with him. And that's two guys I'd already have drafted above him. So I'd love to see him on a team. I just don't think it's going to be drafted.
Drafted, yeah. Okay. Dominic, what are your thoughts on Carter Bradley? I know, and by the way, I did fail to mention this, but you are on a show called Draft Dogs that I believe is going to go live tomorrow during the draft to continue kind of breaking stuff down as they go. And obviously you can go back on YouTube and watch all the previous ones and see what these guys have said. I was watching last week's episode earlier this week and just phenomenal stuff. You guys do a great job, by the way. But I mean, I know you've got a lot of that draft expertise. So I don't know if you guys have talked about Carter Bradley specifically on the show, but I'm going to ask your thoughts about him now as far as you can, even just him versus the field, if that's easier for you to do, and give us an explanation of why he may not be picked, or if you see him as more of a preferred free agent.
Once they get into that 6th, 7th round and preferred free agent, it's kind of splitting hairs because it's going to be where teams value or view the value of picking the quarterback as opposed to picking a receiver or an edge rusher that they can use in like special teams coverage and stuff like that. I think he possibly could get drafted on day 3. I know he did well at the Senior Bowl. I mean, the quarterback class didn't wow me like I thought they would, but he was better than I expected. And like JC said, he kind of opened the floodgates at South Alabama after spending 4 seasons at Toledo. Had a 66% completion rate in those 2 years at South Alabama. So he's got some accuracy, probably not the greatest of arm, but he can throw it to that short mid-range,
Biggest thing about him is he's smart. He's not going to sit there and consistently throw it into double and triple coverages all game long. He'll have a few bad passes that he does it with, but for the most part, he's real smart with the ball, and he'll take like check downs whenever he needs to and stuff. So that's what helps keep him at that 66%.
Yeah.
And what could really help him at the next level if he does end up on an NFL team? I think one way or another he's likely to. Does anyone disagree that he doesn't get picked? I mean, he's getting a chance somewhere, whether it's drafted or preferred free agent, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the talent is there to at least give him a shot and see what he can do. But like you said, JC, that could be his biggest intangible, is the fact that he's got the smarts to know when to just take the easy pass and take the 2 to 3 yards instead of looking for the 17-yarder downfield to take the chance on. TJ, former quarterback yourself, I don't know how much you saw of Carter Bradley. I know you took in quite a few games as we did the coverage last year, but anything specific that you note or mention of for Carter Bradley there at South Alabama?
I think we covered most of it. I mean, his stats didn't wow me. 2,600 passing yards last year, 19 touchdowns, I think 1 rushing touchdown. So he didn't blow me away. I will say, like everybody else, I mean, his 66% completion record or completion rating bodes very well for him. That said, though, I think the one thing that scouts are going to look at, NFL scouts are going to look at, is while he is, I guess, strategic with where he places the ball and doesn't want to, risk the turnover and those kinds of things, I think those things too can sort of play at your detriment, right? They want to see in those games, take the chance. How much do you trust your arm? And going back to Dom's point, he doesn't have a cannon, right? He's not, he's not Ben DiNucci, right? So I think that will play largely into what a lot of scouts think. And it depends on the team too, right? Because like if you're going to Jim Harbaugh's offense and you're going to be a backup, then it's probably going to be very run heavy. They don't need you to throw the ball, right? I remember one of the biggest similarities to Carter, I think, that I'm thinking of in my head is Chad Pennington. Jets didn't need Chad Pennington to do a ton, right? He had very good running backs in his backfield, and he had Keyshawn Johnson as a possession receiver. So he didn't need a lot, and he didn't need to have a 70-yard cannon. Can you throw the ball 15 to 20 yards down the field? If the answer is yes, then he can fit that offense. But he's not going to fit into an offense like, the Dallas Cowboys or, somebody who wants to throw the ball 40, 50 times a game. Does that make sense?
Yep. Absolutely.
And that is South. We had 1,000-yard rusher in LaDamian Webb, so he did just what he was, nothing more.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, and let's be honest, South was where they were last year, and obviously they didn't really meet expectations this year, but it was the defense that was winning them a lot of those games too, and we'll see that as we go through and see just how many South Alabama hopefuls are listed here for NFL draft. So we've also got Davis Brin from Georgia Southern sitting here. Obviously, he is more of that spread option or spread offense gunslinger, right? I mean, when you see his touchdown to interception ratio, I don't know. I mean, maybe the thing you can lean on if you're an NFL guy is saying he wasn't in the system long enough, right? I mean, he was at Georgia Southern for 1 season. He came from, I believe, another MAC school, guys, off the top of my head. Tulsa. Okay, so not a MAC school, but I don't know exactly. Dominic, do you have any idea what Tulsa runs offensively? I mean, was it the same type of like air raid type situation?
Offhand, I don't recall, to be honest with you.
Okay. Yeah, I don't take in many Tulsa Hurricane games, so I can't say for sure. But I don't know what his chances are, even as a preferred free agent. Obviously, like TJ said, the thing that he may have over Carter is he's not afraid to try and put it in those tight windows and downfield passes that he's attempted. One that's intriguing to me, because I really like how he plays the game. He needs to probably make a few better decisions every once in a while, but I like Darren Granger from Georgia State. I don't know what his pro potential is myself. Probably, I'm not the guy that's going to be giving these guys grades, but I'd like to see him get a shot. I can say that. I mean, he's that good mix of mobility and your more typical style pro quarterback as well, because he doesn't watching him enough, I don't think he overruns, I would say. He certainly seems to wait until he has to do it. And I don't know who wants to go first here, but thoughts on Darren Granger from Georgia State and what he's able to do.
I think he's I would have had him a little bit higher on the list, but as much as I've seen him last season, I think he could very easily make a roster. Not drafted, but make a roster. Strictly because athletic.
Yeah. Dominic, what are your thoughts on Darren Granger?
I mean, I haven't watched him as much as you guys have and with the Sun Belt and all, but I mean, kind of like what JC said, he's going to get a shot. He's not like the dual threat quarterback, but he does enough and he's athletic enough to buy time and extend and make plays when needed. I think he had like 700 yards rushing in back-to-back seasons, like last year and the year before that too. So, I mean, he's got – there's something there, So he hits in the right system that can utilize him right. You never know.
Yeah. And
at Georgia State last year too.
He did what?
I think he was leading rusher at Georgia State last year too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which is impressive because they had a good running back there as well. So, he didn't have to be, but he took it on himself. So there you go. I mean, that proves right there that he's got somebody who can run the ball. It wasn't that he had to do it, but he was capable of doing it. And TJ, you were a dual threat quarterback in high school. So why don't you give your thoughts on, because I know for a fact you've seen Darren Granger play a good amount of football.
Yeah, seen him play a lot. I think he uses his legs. I think he uses his legs strategically, right, when he needs to. He doesn't overrun the ball. I think you said this earlier, Dom. He doesn't overrun the ball. He doesn't take control of the game. He does it in the flow of the game, right? He doesn't force himself on the defense or force himself on the offense. The one thing I do love about him is his size. 6'4", 225, 230 pounds. I mean, honestly, I don't know he needs to get much bigger in terms of girth, right? Like thickness, maybe 230, 230. I want him to stay. So he's kind of Joe Flacco-esque, right? Joe Flacco, I think, is like 6'5" and some change and maybe like 230-ish, right?
Maybe add on a little more muscle, but not lose some mobility.
Right. Like he's not super fast or agile or any of those things. But I will tell you this, having played against Joe Flacco and also watched him play as a Baltimore Raven, he can certainly get out of the pocket and get you 10, 12 yards on third down, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what Darren Granger can pose. I think that's the threat he has. Again, also very accurate with the football, almost 70% passing, 68.5%, passing, touchdown interception ratio 20-7. I think, those are attributes that will get you on a roster. Mm-hmm. Where, I don't know. And for what team, I don't know. I think he'll be an excellent backup, in the coming years. I don't project him to be, Russell Wilson or anybody like that. Like, he's not going to come out the gate starting, but I do think he could be a serviceable Jacoby Brissett, right? Mm-hmm. A very serviceable backup long term.
Yeah, absolutely. One that was surprising to me, Jair Wright at ULM, because they kind of went back and forth between quarterbacks. We're not going to break down much of the rest of this because Desmond Trotter is the same situation, right? He was kind of the backup to Carter Bradley. Again, he's kind of one of those guys that's got the size, your prototypical like pro size to him, though. I'm not so sure about either of those guys' pro prospects, but Gunnar Watson is intriguing, and we had Ben say that he thinks Watson has more potential than Bradley. What was interesting is Watson had kind of the like crazy touchdown to interception ratio 2 years ago. Then this season he came in and did very well, obviously, with where Troy ended up, both within the Sun Belt and then, they ended up getting a Power 5 opponent in Duke, or now Power 4 opponent in Duke for their bowl game, and kind of a weird situation. I think both teams came down with like a stomach bug illness thing before their bowl game because of where they ate. I guess don't eat at that restaurant or wherever
they got
did.
That Michael Jordan pizza.
Yeah. But unfortunately for Troy, they didn't have the Michael game after the Michael Jordan pizza because he went off after that. They did not, unfortunately for them. But, yeah, I mean, Gunnar Watson really matured a lot this past year, and I think that his pro prospects are certainly better. But I don't know if I'd put him personally above Carter Bradley from what I've seen from the two of them. Yeah. And to me, like, one good season doesn't show me quite enough. But hey, if he gets a preferred free agent spot, maybe he can be impressive in a camp and be on a roster or a practice squad and bide his time before, breaking through. Anyone have anything left to say on the quarterbacks before we move on to the probably the most interesting aspect of Sunbelt potential picks in the NFL draft?
Let's get to the running backs.
Yeah, let's get it on.
Here we go. All right. So pictured as we see below here from the Senior Bowl was Rasheen Ali from Marshall, who was it's crazy to say this, as good as he was, not far and away the best running back in the conference. I mean, you've got three guys right there that you could all make the argument for. So we'll just name them right off the bat. Rasheen Ali, Kamani Vidal, and Frank Gore Jr. You can't miss any of those guys. When you're starting running back, you're having success in the backfield. So TJ, why don't you start us off going in a little bit of reverse order, talk about all three or just the one you want to, whatever you want to do here, freestyle it.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, Kamani Vidal last year at 1,600 yards, 14 touchdowns, averaged 5.6 yards a touch. You know how hard that is?
Mm-hmm.
You know how hard that is? I played running back, I played quarterback, and also played slot receiver. It is very, very hard to average almost 6 yards a carry at any level, right? So, I mean, you're essentially a walking 2nd and 4 every time you get, you know what I mean? Like you're setting yourself up ahead of the chains every time. So I say that to say that's outstanding. And the good thing about running backs when it relates to the NFL, sure, they're going to go lower, they get drafted lower and they don't get valued as high, but a non-brand name running back can end up leading your franchise, right? Yep. And it's the most translatable position in the NFL. Right. It's the most come in ready to play because you can't teach vision. You can't teach scheme. I mean, just the ability to get the football and run it. So I think Kamani Vidal, again, 5'8", 215 pounds. He's a bowling ball. Right. I think, certainly great. Frank Gore Jr. It's in the name. It's like wearing a pair of Nikes. I don't care what pair it is. It's Nike. Right. It's Frank Gore's son. Yes, he's going to make a roster. You'd be kidding me. He's probably going to make 2 or 3 if he gets cut the first time. So, somebody's going to give him a shot. And then I would say probably Rasheen Ali is my favorite of the 3 running backs, partly because I got a chance to talk to him, but also because I just think he has the most immediate upside, right? He has the speed. He can catch out of the backfield. He's extremely shifty. In the open space, and he can break tackles and run through tackles. So, I mean, obviously those are my top 3. I struggle to say in what order because I think it's going to be contingent upon what type of team they go to, right? Yeah. The Baltimore Ravens I'm looking at as a huge, huge win for. I mean, obviously he would have to back up Derrick Henry. Would be an awesome place for Rasheen Ali to come in and be a relief back. Yeah. But it'll depend on a lot of things. So I love those 3. You can't miss, I don't think.
Yeah. JC, you wanted to move on to the running backs with a great excitement here. So let's hear what you've got to say. And certainly give me something on LaDainian Webb since you saw him quite a bit throughout his college career, I guess, really.
Well, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. I think he's top 2 on this list behind Kamani. I don't think Frank Gore Jr. is as good as people are trying to make him out to be. But Ali, Webb, and Vidal are top 3 easy, in my opinion. And I think Vidal is the number 1 running back in all of the group of 5 going into this draft class.
You got him over Rasheen Ali?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. I think after what we saw at that conference championship game down there in Troy, I mean, there's little doubt that he is one of the best. He was running all over the field, and he just could not be stopped. Yeah. Dominic, we talked about Frank Gore Jr. and his size a little bit. Could you expand on that? Maybe, I don't know if you guys have covered him specifically in the show or not, but maybe you did because of, again, like TJ had mentioned, he has a pedigree here, so we're not talking about some unknown quantity. But what are your thoughts on Frank Gore Jr.?
Him and Vidal, I mean, like TJ mentioned, with Vidal being a bowling ball, Gore has that same kind of characteristic.
Right.
They both got that compact frame and, they both can run, like, hand them the rock, And to, like, TJ's point, as much as I liked seeing Ali in the Senior Bowl, that bicep tear that he had just frightens me a little bit to know where he is on that recovery trail. So I think that's going to hurt his chances a little bit. But
do you think this is one of those situations where there's a team that's kind of keeping him a secret? Like, they know what they got in him, they like him, they're going to take him, but they're just hoping he doesn't get drafted so they can sign him, kind of thing? Because I know those kind of deals go down with players that got hurt, and there's another one in the defensive side for JMU that we'll talk about here in a little bit too. But do you think that could be a situation here where he's like, hey, I'll try and be quiet as much as I can here so that I can lay low and sign with you guys?
I mean, I'm sure it'll happen, and it's probably in the works, and like there's talk about it and everything. But he'll get on the team for sure. And then even if he's not the relief back or that second string behind like a Derrick Henry, maybe stash him as like a third down back, and work him in gradually.
Or kick returner.
Yeah, and use him like gradually till that bicep is 100% kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, when you talk about bicep tears and things like that, I think they're less of a worry for positions like running back because of the things you don't have to do, right? Mm-hmm. Like if I'm a running back, I can pretty much, for the most part, I can cover that up, right? Mm-hmm. Like I can make that a non-issue if I wanted to. I remember, I think this was back in, the early 2000s when Eddie George was playing against Ray Lewis in the conference championship, right? Tore his bicep or tore his shoulder or something, popped it back in place. Oh yeah, he dislocated his shoulder, popped it back in place, and played the rest of the game and had like 75 more rushing yards. So upper body injuries for running backs, you can hide them pretty well if you don't send them out on routes and you strictly use them as running backs. So again, not discrediting your point, right? Because injuries are injuries, right? Yeah. And if it happen once, it can happen again. I just think as a running back, those kinds of injuries are less likely to matter as much when you get on that stage.
And it's a fair point too. I just like my whole thought was how, like, obviously he's healing and everything like that, which we all wish him the best on the speedy recovery and all that stuff. But that flexibility in the arm to carry the ball is going to be where I would look, not necessarily like the arm strength or anything, but that flexibility to. Yeah.
And also them hitting it and it coming loose because his grip strength isn't there. Yeah, that's fair. That's all fair points.
Yeah, definitely. The one thing that Frank Gore has that you probably don't see as much at the next level, right? Because these guys are bigger, faster, stronger than what he's experienced so far, but he's also got that gadget back aspect to him, right? Yeah. Like he was known as the super back for a reason because he could throw the football like a freaking quarterback because, just like TJ, he was kind of that dual threat, do everything kind of player in a high school level. So they asked him to do it because they didn't have a great quarterback situation for Southern Miss for pretty much 2 seasons. And he got in there and, man, I'll tell you what, he probably could have played quarterback full time if they really wanted him to.
If they needed it, yeah.
Yeah, I did ask him if he wanted to play for any of his dad's teams, and he said he grew up he was a Chiefs fan, so he wouldn't mind playing for the Chiefs.
And interestingly enough, his dad is working for the Niners now, so there's a possibility that maybe they do him a favor and they pair the two up again. I'm sure he wouldn't hate that either.
No,
a heck of a backfield.
You make an NFL roster. I don't give a damn where you go. Just get on a roster.
Oh, absolutely.
That's true. That's a great point, though, Dominic. You put those two in the backfield, split from the quarterback. I mean, what do you do? Who do you go after, right? Like, you got to respect that. And because, again, you have Gore dump a pass over the top to a tight end or something, and everyone's, I don't know. Anyways, I'm not the playmaking guru here. We're going to jump into a quick ad from our sponsor, Danos, and then we'll get into TJ's favorite position, the Diva Group, the wide receivers.
Yeah.
Yum, yum, get you some. Yum, yum, get you some. Yum, yum, get you some. Yum, yum, get you some.
Dano Seasoning, food's favorite flavor.
Yum, yum, get you some.
I'm Joe Burrito, your favorite burrito. Whoa, whoa.
Joe, we
Hey.
all know you're the best.
What?
You can always do better.
What you got?
Try the new Dano's Hot
Whoa.
Chipotle.
Hey. Ooh, that's spicy. Yum, yum.
Yum, yum, get you some.
All right. Oh, man, love that dancing chicken.
Not
Dancing
creepy.
burrito. Like it. Well, the dancing chickens and then the talking burrito, I guess, is how I should phrase that. Anyways, thank you to Dano's for sponsoring the show again. Promo code below doggos at checkout. They are food's favorite flavor. We're gonna get you guys a fun episode coming up too with TJ grilling up some good eats. We just got to put it on the schedule and get it done now that the weather is. Although I don't know, TJ, I know you guys are in different spots, Dominic and JC, but here in North Carolina, they tricked us. They played a joke. It got up to about 90 something degrees for a couple days. Then it's dropped down to like the last couple mornings have been in like the very, very low 40s and sometimes even the high 30s. So it was
Yeah,
nice
that's similar weather to you guys. So
okay. There we go. Yeah. So, okay. Maybe a trick's been played on all of us then. Speaking of ones that aren't going to play tricks, I think the top couple wide receivers listed here are all great options. Although, if you look at kind of the grades as I went through, not very many of these guys are actually expected to be drafted as far as a lot of the experts are concerned. I put the picture up of Sam Pinckney. I think out and out, maybe he's not your best wide receiver or something. You can break down all the ways that he's got deficiencies or whatnot, but then you've also got to put his highlight reel together because he makes some absolutely phenomenal catches. TJ, you broke down specifically the one in the bowl game that he had. I think it was a bowl game, right? I think it was a bowl game where he kind of jumped. I can't even describe how he did it, but essentially kind of caught it jumping behind the back of the defender. You've seen types of catches like that, but it's always impressive. It never gets old. So just a phenomenal wide receiver there. I guess we can start there, TJ. You saw him play there at Coastal Carolina. Thoughts on Sam Pinckney and possibly his NFL draft hope?
Yeah, no doubt about his hands. I mean, his hands are phenomenal. He can catch the ball, really over anybody. His size is incredible, 6'2", 220 pounds. He's not uber fast, right? He's not, he's not going to wow you with speed down the field. I think, I'm trying to think of maybe a liken in him too in terms of the NFL, but he's not somebody that's going to jump off your screen with speed, but he's going to make the play that you need him to make. I think a lot of teams are going to try and use him in the slot and have him as a big receiver over the middle, right? Making those big catches where a tight end would normally be. I think pairing him with a tight end and then having him opposite side in the slot basically gives you two tight ends on the field at any moment or at any point, or, jump balls back in the end zone kind of things. He's not going to run a 4-3. He might not even run a 4-4, to be quite honest. But he makes phenomenal catches. Route running, I don't know that he can run the entire route tree, and I think that might hurt as well. But depending on where they want to play him, it might not matter. Right, I might not need you to run a double move comeback if you're in the slot, right? So I think it'll depend. I do think he catches the catches that he's made this past year. Behind defenders, over cats' heads. I mean, back of the end zone, 2 feet down kind of deal. I mean, he's making NFL catches, so I like him. I don't. And then the other thing too is this draft class is so deep at receiver from literally every school. I mean, you talk about the top 5 there's 10 wide receivers that realistically could go in the first, second round. So it's littered with wide receivers. So he'll go, but unfortunately, I don't know that he'll be drafted.
Gotcha. Dominic, why don't you talk specifically? Don't even worry about the specific guys from the Sun Belt here. Go ahead and expand on TJ's point on how deep of a wide receiver class we've got coming up this season.
It's probably the deepest in, I'd say, at least 5 years.
Yeah.
And that's going to play a factor because, if like Sam had come out last year, He might have been looking at that like 6th round, 5th round kind of grade, but because of the just sheer amount of receivers,
Yeah.
you're looking at, to TJ's point, Pinckney, who's a 1,000-yard receiver, going as a free agent, whether it be priority free agent or even in that 7th round with value,
Yeah, absolutely. JC,
So many.
yeah, Pinckney played at 2 Sunbelt schools. I don't know how much you got a chance to see him play. Obviously spent some time at Georgia State before transferring over to Coastal. Any thoughts on him specifically or anybody else? You've got do we have any South Alabama wide receivers? We don't. We've had some South Alabama wide receivers that have been very, very good go to the NFL. Is one still on your Dallas Cowboys, TJ?
Yeah.
What's his name?
Jalen Tolbert.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Jalen Tolbert. Yeah, I forgot about Jalen Tolbert.
Yep.
Yeah. He made some pretty good catches last year for us.
I hope he see the field a little bit more. But as far as this draft class goes, I like Pinckney, but there is not much room for anybody to be drafted. Like, I'm looking right now, my favorite group of 5 wide receiver is Troy Horton with Colorado State. And I'm trying to find a place where he can get drafted. And I just don't see one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we used, or I specifically used Dane Brugler. I'm butchering that last name. I can see it. I just, for whatever reason, when it comes out of my mouth, it doesn't come out very well. But he does the beast rankings for The Athletic. If you go by those, Sam Pinckney isn't even the highest Sunbelt wide receiver as far as numbers are concerned. He's at number 95. That's not 95 overall. That's 95th rated receiver as far as Brugers is concerned. Bo Corrales, who is a transfer from UNC down to Texas State, actually comes in at number 62 and is the highest rated wide receiver for the Sun Belt. Again, this is just one guy's statistical roundup of how he has these guys ranked. And from there, you get everybody in the 100s or further. There's not 100 wide receivers taken in any, to my knowledge, there's never been 100 wide receivers taken in any NFL draft. The prospects for any of these guys to be taken are very slim, especially in the draft, the actual draft process itself. Preferred free agent, that's where you're looking at 2 or 3 of these guys maybe having a shot. I'll tell you personally, we're not going to touch on all these. There's like 14 wide receivers listed here. I remember Bo Corrales' name being called all the time when App State played him at UNC. So, he's definitely a threat there. But the one that I think might be one of the most impressive that I saw all of last season is Tyrone Howell. And I just don't think he got enough exposure being on a bad ULM team for many years. I think talent-wise, though, he's phenomenal from what I've seen. I'm not as experienced and expertise-wise as TJ is when breaking down a route tree to tell you whether he's got all the intangibles needed there. But his hands, his size, his speed, to me, that part should put him with a shot here. Anybody else you guys just want to mention before we move on to the next position?
Yeah, I got a question for you guys. Yeah. Phoenix Sproles, what do you guys take on him? He's got a bit of an NFL pedigree too, because his cousin was Darren Sproles.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up his size exactly, because that's where, off the top of my head, I would be concerned if he's not putting up crazy stats with the size. You think Darren Sproles when you see the name, and I don't know if he's even the same caliber size-wise overall.
He's about 6 footish kind of thing.
He's 5'11", 194, at least at last Google check.
That's pretty good size.
It's not bad. It's not as bad as I thought, I guess. I'm thinking that, maybe he comes in at like 5'9" and 172 or something. Then at that point, my thoughts are vastly different.
442 receiving yards total. I mean, that's not going to wow anybody, but it's one of those, you got to see him test, right? Like, how fast is he going to run? Because 5'11", 192 or 194 running a 4.3, that's a lot different than, 5'11", 194 running a 4.6.
I will say he had 880 yards for receiving at a North Dakota State before JMU. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that. Do you think that hurt his prospects to make that move? Because there's been plenty of guys that get drafted from North Dakota State. I think on that list, if I remember seeing correctly, there's a lot more draft picks from North Dakota State than the majority of the Sun Belt schools all time. So I'm not sure that the move was necessary to improve the draft prospect, but maybe that was part of it. I don't really know, I guess.
Like the saying goes, tape doesn't lie.
Yeah.
And scouts are going to do their due diligence, whether they're watching him play at North Dakota State or at JMU,
True.
Yeah.
Very, very true. JC, we touched on. Yep. Go ahead, TJ.
No, I was just saying, if you build it, they will come. It doesn't matter where you go to school. They'll find you if you're good.
Yep. JC, any thoughts on any other wideouts before we move on?
I was going to bring up Ashton Hawkins from Texas State, but I pulled up his stats, and the only game that he really just dominated was against us, which is why I thought about him, and against Arkansas State, where he had 165 yards. I thought his stats were a whole lot better, but he is explosive.
He is explosive. He's probably much like Phoenix Sproles in that regard. Like, those guys can pop off, but like the down and out every single week, they're not putting up those stats every single time. So, it may be worth it for like a return man for a team that's got plenty of guys in other positions and then just looking for a spark in that spot. But definitely not enough to get drafted for that, but maybe a free agent shot for some of those guys. Tight ends, obviously, as you can see here, the Sun Belt is not necessarily known for tight ends historically, and they definitely don't have a great shot at a bunch of draft picks this year either. The one pictured here that's probably the best shot as far as tight ends are concerned is Neil Johnson from Louisiana. It's maybe hard to tell here, but he is a big dude. So any thoughts on any specific tight ends? JC, I'll have you start off because we've got Brandon Crum down there at the bottom for South Alabama. Any thoughts on him specifically before we break it down any further?
I was hoping he had a little bit better of a year this year than what he had. Kind of left on a low note, in my opinion, but we haven't really had a Gerald Everett since Gerald Everett, so can't really complain about it.
Gerald Everett was different.
Yeah.
Absolute monster.
Yeah, no doubt about it. He did score this is going back to Neil Johnson. I just wanted to bring this up. He did score 5 touchdowns this season. So, again, it's not bad for a tight end, but it's also not going to blow anybody away when you've got guys that are in the NFL doing stuff that Travis Kelce's of the world do. That not a fair comparison. I'm not saying
I was going to say Travis Kelce is one of one. So.
Yeah. I will say when you want to see something that pops off with the tight end, though, you want to see something statistically that just blows you away. And that's where I think that the downside to all these guys in the Sun Belt are concerned. I mean, there wasn't a tight end all season long that I said that is like the key factor for the other team's defense. I'll just be honest. There wasn't a single time when I looked at any game and said that is a determining factor. At best, what I would think going into a Sun Belt game is maybe the tight end gets split out a little bit more and they hit him for a couple short yardages.
Right.
I didn't see anybody, doing anything where they're the deep threat. Not that they're a deep threat, but a big threat, to be a massive factor throughout the game. So unfortunately, the tight ends position group for the Sun Belt going in here isn't the greatest. And it's not based on talent. It's probably just based on use throughout, much of the season. And Neil Johnson, again, by those rankings, is sitting there at number 43. Keaton Upshaw from Georgia Southern at 45. So 2 guys not far outside. But again, what do we see? Dominic, you have any idea how many tight ends typically get drafted? I mean, it's like it's less than 10 or 15, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not many at all. I mean, you've got and traditionally too, I mean, it's almost like you have that big drop off between like those top 3 kind of tight ends and the rest of them. So, and to your point, I mean, Neil Johnson looks the part, so he could get like a invite or PFA kind of priority free agent kind of grade. you know.
Yeah.
I will say Keaton Upshaw, while he doesn't have the stats to back it up, kid is 6'7", 245. I mean, Jesus Lord.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about that is he'd be a 2 guard in the NBA. But 6'7" for a tight end for any football player is just enormous. I mean, he is a man. So I don't know. I guess it just depends on the type of offense you go to.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, so I think that'll wrap up the tight ends. Unfortunately, just not as much to talk about, right? I mean,
it is what it is.
Say what it is. Now, a position group that might be one of the best out of all of the draft prospects for the Sun Belt is the offensive tackle group. And pictured here, we've got Ethan Driscoll from Marshall, who's actually not the top-rated one. But like I said to these guys before we got going on the show, I tried to spread the pictures around, so we got a number of Sun Belt schools that are actually showing up here. But Ethan Driscoll is friggin' huge, so that's another reason I put him on there. Nathan Thomas from Louisiana is actually, as far as the list that I'm going by is concerned, the highest projected, one of the highest projected picks in all of the Sun Belt as a projected 5th rounder, ranked number 16 in offensive tackles as far as the list is concerned. Driscoll comes in at number 18, so they're right there, neck and neck. And Driscoll himself projected to be a 5th to 6th round prospect. And Travis Glover Jr. from Georgia State projected to be a 6th or 7th round prospect. And then the guys behind them, again, not far behind them actually, but at least Bray Walker from Texas State. Then there is a drop off before you see Brian Miller's name. But I'd say those top 4 guys there have a great shot at being drafted because, like Dominic said too, when you get into that 5, 6, at least the 6, 7 range, who knows? I mean, trades happen that cause other teams to do different things. You got a guy you just like personally, you want to give a shot to, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, and 2, when you get into rounds 5, 6, and 7, that's where majority of the offensive line is taken, right? Like you'll have your top 4 or 5 offensive guards or tackles or something like that, and they'll get drafted right away, right? Because you're not going to pass up on a Penei Sewell, right? Playing for Detroit. Like you're not going to pass up on that guy. But generally speaking, your offensive linemen are taken 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round. So you're talking, these guys being the cream of the crop. That the difference in draft space is not indicative of their talent. It's indicative of what other positions, skill-wise, that other teams need to fill. So them being ranked, or listed as a 5th round, 6th round draft pick, that's actually pretty high for an offensive guard or offensive tackle, especially coming out of the Sun Belt. I mean, Nathan Thomas is 6'5", 334 pounds. I mean, he ought to be able to move some traffic, right? So
if he can't, there's a problem.
Yeah, I'd say so. And also, like you said, to be listed as a 5th or 6th round draft pick means you're actually probably a 3rd or 4th rounder. It's just there's a lot of receivers or a lot of running backs and tight ends that are going to get the nod before you because they're more exciting to watch. That's the only difference.
Yeah. And Driscoll even is what, like 6'8"?
Yeah.
He's 6'8", like 315 or something.
Yeah.
No.
He's a huge dude.
You've got mammoth people there.
I don't even know what life would be like for me if I was that big.
So I just want to go over this. It looks like Driscoll did not participate at the Combine. There was 7 players invited to the Combine from the Sun Belt. Nathan Thomas did participate. He ran a 40-yard dash in 5.19 seconds. Now, that does not sound impressive, but with that size, that's insanely impressive. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't sound impressive when you compare it to the fast guys, I guess, is what I'm saying. I could probably run in 5.19 seconds or slower. So for that guy to be running that speed is incredible.
I'll put it in perspective for you. Tom Brady is 100 pounds lighter.
And he ran what?
And he ran a 5.1.
Oh, jeez.
So,
yeah,
he's moving.
Well, then hopefully I could run faster than that because I'm watching Brady run and I'm like, dude.
Yeah, it does not look good.
It is ugly. Oh,
and he actually got faster as he got older.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
eating avocado ice cream and everything, man. What is that guy doing?
Living better than we are, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. JC, any thoughts on these guys before we go over to the OGs, as we call them?
Not really. Like y'all said, it's just behemoths of men just sitting at that edge of getting drafted. And like y'all already said, all 4 of those guys could be drafted anywhere from 5th to 7th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much just agree with all of you.
Yeah. Driscoll's wingspan was 83.5 inches, by the way. He's not gonna have those alligator arms.
No, that's for sure.
So you're saying he has to buy 2 seats on an airplane? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
At least.
What's funny is I waited tables up in Blowing Rock, which is like 20, 30 minutes from Boone, right? And I don't even know who he was, because back then I was young and dumb and not as well versed in the football like past as I am now. There had to have been a former App State football player who had come back, and he came into the restaurant and sat down. And dude, it's like it's so obvious when someone is like NFL size at those positions.
Right.
You can have skill position players that don't look like much in street clothes. When you see these types of dudes walking around, like, you just know. I mean, it was very obvious with the flashiness of the jewelry and the car he drove in on too. But even if I didn't know any of that, I mean, it was a dude with plenty of size to him, and just like he had to sit in a booth. I don't think our chairs could even hold the man. So anyway, getting back to the actual draft stuff here. Pictured here for the offensive guards, I've got Bucky Williams from App State, and this is, I'd say, more like the tight end group. Yet again, I don't know the prospect of draft ability for most of these guys, to be honest, but there is some shot at some preferred free agents, I'd say. I don't know if you guys have anything thought-wise on this. Again, it's harder to speak a ton about these positions, right? There's not like a statistical measurement that tells you these guys are great or not, at least not in touchdowns and yardage, right? I mean, those are easy when you got that stuff to back you up. With the offensive linemen and the defensive linemen, again, there's some statistical aspect to what they do, but a lot of the work that they do doesn't get on a stat sheet. So anything you guys want to expand upon, any names that stick out to you, anything like that?
For me, I think Isaiah Helms and Bucky. Well, I'll say this. One's 6'2", 295, the other 6'3", 300. When you're talking offensive guards, that's probably right in that sweet spot-ish in terms of how you want those guys to be. And the reason is because you don't want them as big as your tackles, because they're going to be moving a lot around into reaching and getting up on that second level blocking linebackers depending on the run scheme, right? There's a lot of trap action that happens too. I know Baltimore runs a ton of traps. So guys that are that size that aren't too terribly big, I say 300 pounds isn't too terribly big. It's still, mammoth sized men. But I think that helps. And another thing too is when you're 6'2" and 6'3", as opposed to 6'5" and 6'7", right? It's much better for your quarterback to see over in that pocket, right? So they prefer shorter guards and centers, right? Throughout that first line of, so their size certainly helps them when you talk about the prototypical guard in the NFL, right? You want them short and stout. So you can, as a quarterback, you can see over. Most quarterbacks are anywhere between 6'2" to 6'5", right? You want to be able to see over them, extend release over the top. So from a size perspective, obviously I can't speak a lot to their, there's no stats or performance rankings or anything like that. But from a purely just size, I mean, they fit the bill. That's for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Before I get any more thoughts, so Bucky Williams comes in as the highest rated, the one pictured here at 42. And again, that's guard positions, number 42, not 42 overall. So still ways down there on the list, unfortunately. The rest are all grouped right in there together with Isaiah Helms from App State, John Bolding from Southern Miss, and Khalil Crowder from Georgia Southern. So I'd say they're all right kind of near each other, besides Bucky being a little bit ahead of the rest of the pack there, and that's one of the reasons he was picked there. Also, I love the picture here, man. That shows you the size difference, right there. I'm not sure exactly who that is. He's blocking there from Georgia State, but you can see he's got quite the advantage. He's probably lifting that guy up a little bit there too.
Look at his arms.
Yeah.
Well, and that's to TJ's point. I mean, you want like your guards to have those like stout arms and not have the 83.5-inch reach that like a Driscoll has at tackle, you know? And I think what helps Williams is that like he transferred in from Austin P, I want to say.
I believe
think
so.
you're right.
And I think in the 2 seasons he was with App State, he only allowed like 2 sacks. So,
right.
I mean, he's going to stop it.
Yeah, I'm very hopeful that he gets at least a shot here. Again, not necessarily being drafted, but I hope a team gives him a shot. I think he was a fan favorite mostly because of the red flowing hair he had, looking like a Viking out there. So that's another reason I hope he gets a shot. I think he'd be like a fan favorite to try and make a team and everything. So, JC, any thoughts on the guard position before we go on to when we have one listed player for in the next position group?
Not really. It's just a lot of these guys, it's like the guards and the tight ends, we really won't be seeing a lot of in the NFL. Maybe the UFL, but that's about as much as it's gonna be.
Yeah. All right. Look at this laundry list of players from center position that are likely to be drafted from the Sun Belt. The lone position group here, or the lone player in the position group here, is Bryson Mays from Southern Miss, a center. And the guy who gets all the coverage is actually also in the picture here, as Frank Gore Jr. tries to run away from everyone after a snap by Bryson Mays. Just talk about the position in general, guys, because, again, this is I guess just a position that doesn't get a ton of love overall, but it's a vitally important position as they pretty much touch the ball on every single play, unless it's a long snapper coming in to replace him, I guess, on a punt or kick situation. I don't know. TJ, why don't you go first? Talk about, you took snaps under center at the high school level and had some experience with that aspect of it. Talk about how important a position center is and maybe what Bryson could hopefully bring to a team he may get a shot with.
Yeah, they have to be very much connected to the quarterback. And I don't mean that just physically. I mean, mentally, they have to see what the quarterback sees, right? You're calling out offensive line coverage. You're essentially the quarterback of the offensive line, right? So you're calling out that offensive line coverage. You're sliding the protection. Obviously, ultimately, the quarterback makes the final call on where the protection slides to, but you're immediately finding the mic, right? The first job of the center, identify the mic, always, right? So you have to be cerebral in terms of playing that center position. They don't get a lot of love because they do a lot of the dirty work, right? Unless there's a bad snap. So, and when you're a center, sometimes not hearing your name for a whole game is a good thing, right? But I think from a center perspective, right, like you and the quarterback, y'all have got to be on the same wavelength at all times, right? Knowing where the slap protection, knowing where the blitz is coming from, being able to call and find out the mic, understanding what those blitz packages look like, and being able to read the defense, right? So, and then also too, understanding audibles and sliding protection calls and all of that. So it's very, very important. I think center probably is the second most cerebral position on the football field. Wow.
That's saying a lot. Dominic, how many centers do you think get drafted? I mean, that's also got to be an insanely low number, right? As important a position it is, it's kind of crazy to think about to me.
Well, because they mold them, right? Like you take some offensive linemen and they just a prime example. Sorry, Dominic, not to step on your toes here. A prime example is Daniel Kilgore. Daniel Kilgore was a guard for App State when I played, right? He went on to play in Miami and then later won a Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes as his center. So a lot of them, it's a learned behavior. Right? Yeah. Most offensive linemen are very, very smart anyway. I don't know if I've ever met a dumb one. Well, maybe one or two. But for the most part, most offensive linemen are extremely cerebral individuals altogether. So you take that and then, with the ability to learn how to snap a football, you make yourself super valuable.
And to TJ's point, I mean, if you're looking at a true center, I don't know that there's one that gets drafted that just plays center. Because you look at, like, even in this draft with JPJ from Oregon, he can play center or guard.
Yeah.
And all these top tier, like, centers are interchangeable for, like, that center guard area. You know, so if there's a true center, it's tough to find.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Good point. And JC, we'll get your thoughts. I just want to mention, too, that Bryson Mays was a transfer in from West Virginia, so he's got some experience at that next level, if you want to call it that. Obviously, West Virginia is technically a power program, and they did have a good season this past year, winning the Duke's Mayo Bowl, and I'll tell that because I was there. So it was a good game to go and watch. This kid, Bryson Mays, for center, you talked about how your typical quarterbacks like these guys a little shorter. He is 6'4", 298.
Jesus Christ.
He's still a huge dude under center there. JC, any thoughts on the center position or Bryson Mays specifically?
I mean, I didn't know he was that tall.
I didn't either.
Like you said, there's
looking in this picture.
But that's a giant center to have to be trying to look over and get the ball downfield. But like they've both said, most centers nowadays, they're going to be playing both guards and center, and then other guards are going to be learning your position in case you go down. So it's just a long list of possible scenarios for guys to get into that position.
Yeah, the more you know, the better. And I always tell centers, if you're a center, you better be learning long snapping if you're in college.
Yep.
Learn how to long snap, right? Again, the more you know, the more you can do, the more dangerous you are, right? And the more valuable you become to a football team. If I know that my starting center, or my backup offensive lineman can also be a long snapper, he's going to have a much higher chance of making my football team.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great.
You're only tying up one roster spot instead of multiple,
Exactly my point. Exactly.
And you look at a guy like Cody Mock out in Tampa, he literally walked on as a tight end.
Gained a ton.
Yeah, I mean, he gained 75 pounds because of the all-you-can-eat meal plan that they had over at but then he took it upon himself to learn that center role and learn that the mechanism of snapping the ball and snapping it well to your quarterback,
Yeah.
So,
Dallas Cowboys long snapper was a converted linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine how valuable you are when you're a backup linebacker that can play defense and special teams. Also, you're a long snapper who can run down and cover punts. I mean, that's two positions in one, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to teach my son. My son plays running back and quarterback and wide receiver in Little League. I'm teaching him how to kick footballs. I want him to be a field goal kicker.
I was just going to say, don't forget Ocho Cinco, wide receiver and kicker. Okay.
And kicker. Yeah. Bro, Adam Vinatieri is like 50 and he just retired 2 years ago.
Yeah. Well, heck, how old is Justin Tucker? He's up there too.
Justin Tucker's going to play until he's 50.
Yeah. That's crazy, man. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and you get hit a lot less.
A whole lot less.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My dad played Division II at Bloomsburg, little old Bloomsburg University in Pennsylvania. And my dad, he'll send me Instagram videos all the time of long snappers doing like drills. And he's like, go show JW, who's my son. And he's 6. And he's just like, this is the position he needs to continue to practice for NFL.
Yeah.
Well, he's not talking about NFL, actually. He's talking about like a college scholarship. He's like, this is a talent that very few people have.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. Anyway, we'll move on to a much more exciting position. Sorry, centers, and sorry, O-linemen. But we've got the edge rushers on screen right now, specifically right here pictured Javon Sullivan from Troy. And actually, Troy has the top 2 edge rushers listed for the Sun Belt, as we've got Richard Jubinor. Is it Jubinor or Jaborner?
It's Jubinor, I believe.
Jubinor. That's what I thought, because I think I got it wrong all season before we had the Troy boys on, and they corrected me. But listen to this. Both guys are projected to either be a draft pick or a preferred free agent. Everybody else on the list, at least on this list, again, this is a specific list, is not expected to be drafted or picked up as a possible free agent. Although I have a hard time believing that when you've got those two guys from JMU sitting right there. Specifically, the one I mentioned earlier without mentioning the name is Jalen Green from JMU, who actually comes in rated below his teammate, Jamor Chroma. But I think that's partly because of the injury that happened during the season last year. But Jalen Green was going off. You heard his name all over the place. Both of those guys were really reasons that JMU had so much success because, as we talked about throughout the season, JMU's offense wasn't bad by any means, but they weren't blowing people away with the offensive ability. They were blowing people away without allowing them to get downfield very often, and that was all due to their defense. And again, with Troy doing the same thing with two of these top guys, JC, I'm going to have you start off on this one because it's your second favorite team there. You know, you got South Alabama number 1, Troy number 2. You know, it's a common theme down there in Mobile for you.
These two guys here are two of the main reasons why we ever beat them. We already struggled with it before, and we will continue after them. But not run the ball to save your life when you have a monster at running back in LaDamian Webb and you still can't get 50 yards in a game. There's not much you can do. They're giving you like 2.5 seconds tops to get the ball out of your hands. Mm-hmm. And if you're back, then there's no hole for you to go through. Like These guys here are absolute monsters. And the JMU guys, I thought Jalen Green, he'd be number 2 on this list, but all these guys are right there with each other, and it makes sense regardless.
Yeah, I will say to your point right there. I don't know. So they got Solomon at number 20, Jubinor at 34, Chroma at 42, and Green at 46. And then there's a pretty large gap before you get to Owen Porter, who was one of TJ and I's favorite players with the 6-shooter celebration.
Yeah, absolutely.
All season. So I want to see him get a shot just solely because of that. I actually saw, I think he brought it looked like 8 to 10 people when Marshall came down to play in Boone. So, large contingent, when your family's coming and bringing that many numbers, you're well supported there. So it'd be cool to see him get a shot as well. Dominic, what are your thoughts on some of these edge rushers? I would think that you guys had maybe at least seen these names on some of your big boards. Maybe not, since you guys probably are focusing on the first round or two, but you heard anything about these monsters at the edge?
Well, my big board's probably a little bit larger than the Draft Dogs one, just from other projects that I have going on. But I did see Solomon and Jibinor, and at the Senior Bowl, both of them stood out. I liked what I saw from both of them. And you add in those JMU guys, and you talk about 4 edge rushers that literally lived in the backfield. You have 26 sacks for the Troy guys and 25.5 for JMU just last season.
Yeah, that's impressive.
It's nuts. I mean, Jubinor had 10 sacks solo by himself. I mean, 59, what was it, 59? Oh, no, 33 tackles for loss. 33 tackles for loss.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? That's since, and he's super, he's not huge, right? He kind of puts me in the mindset of now he's not, God, what's his name? Buffalo Bills.
Von Miller.
He's obviously not a Von Miller. I'm not comparing him to Von Miller. Von Miller is probably a little bit more bendy, right? He's got a better shoulder dip than I would say Richard Jubinor is. But from a size perspective, the comp is there, and he's pretty quick. He's pretty fast. He's not going to blow you away with his size, but he's certainly fast, and he's certainly a short tackler. Yeah.
So when you were saying the speed aspect, 40-yard dash. He's one of the players that did compete in this is Solomon I'm talking about. At the combine, a 4.72 in the 40.
That'll
and
do
at
it.
that size, again, those numbers are crazy. He hit a 37-inch vertical broad jump of 9 feet 11 inches.
Yeah.
and he bench pressed the anybody know the weight off the top of your head?
225.
225? 23 times.
Sheesh. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And especially at 230 pounds. And he's probably not 230 pounds. That's what they have him listed as. He's probably closer to 220, 225. So, yeah, doing 225, basically your weight for 25 or 23 or whatever it is reps, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Benjamin's letting us know former Arkansas State player Omar Bayless is going off in the UFL. Sorry, the NFL. We're talking NFL. UFL for the Showboats. Yeah, I'll be honest, man, with kids, young kids games, I know TJ's in the same boat, although maybe he's recording some of this stuff. I have not taken in as much of the UFL as I'd hoped to. Because I was kind of excited to see what the merger between them and the XFL kind of looked like. I do see that they're having terrible attendance issues. So that's unfortunate because I would like to see a spring football league succeed. But I wish I saw more names that I recognized that made me have more interest. That's part of the problem for me personally. If some of these Sunbelt guys kind of, I guess, knew they weren't going to have the greatest shot at the NFL and could go into this league right before it starts, they graduate in December or something, my uptick in the interest of that league would be a lot higher. And I think that would probably build for most of us, if you got somebody from your favorite team that's going to be playing really soon after their college career ends, that'd be pretty cool to see. So maybe those types of things happen in the future. But, yeah, I mean, is there anybody else you guys want to make mention of? Anyone else that's Charles Coleman, JC? Is that a guy you noticed a lot watching South Alabama this year?
It is, but when you have the top four guys, I mean, it's not somebody that really deserves that mention. I mean, he's a good player, but he's not on that caliber of player.
Yeah. It's hard to be on that level.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, we just talked about those guys being ranked in the 40s. Owen Porter down at 70. Charles comes in at 152. So he's quite a bit ways down the list. But again, in all fairness, I was going off this list. I like the names I saw. I like the mix of just the names and some information plus that gave him like a true ranking for the position. I thought that was an interesting aspect. And you can tell with how he's done it, it wasn't just like, I'm just going to throw these names at a dartboard. There was thought, and he explains kind of how he puts this stuff together. So well done job. He puts in a whole lot of work. You're ranking guys in a position group all the way to 152. Impressive. So I'm going to trust your judgment because I can't do all that. So.
You're obviously putting in the work.
I've been helping a guy do the draft Bible, and it's insane the amount of work that goes into it.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah. All right. Defensive tackles, Allen Henry from Coastal Carolina. This is another position group. You don't see or hear these guys' names as much. I think off the top of my head, heard 3 or 4 of these guys' names all season throughout watching and covering the Sun Belt. To be fair to them and to be honest to the viewers that we're watching here, Allen Henry is a big dude from Coastal Carolina, though. A couple of the other names that I've seen and heard along the way, Quentin Bivens from Southern Miss, definitely Jamie Sheriff. I think I probably heard Sheriff's name a little bit more last year, probably because they had more success on the defensive side and overall record-wise. And then Buda Jones from Troy. Again, the teams with the solid defenses are showing up on this list. Once again, that's really no surprise there. I guess maybe the only surprise is Coastal Carolina's got like 4 guys on this list. So I would have thought, South Alabama or Troy would have been the teams that had that many guys, but Coastal's put up 4 on this list. And again, you're looking at quite a bit of difference in the rankings, if you will, of these players. But any thoughts on the defensive tackles that we're looking at here from Sunbelt guys?
Nobody specifically, but I will say a D tackle position is very unsung, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's awesome when they make a play, right? Like I'm speaking from, I'm obviously a Cowboys fan. Neville Gallimore, he doesn't get his name called a lot, but those are guys that set your linebackers up, right? They take on double team blocks. They muddy everything up. Whenever you see a run play from an offensive standpoint and it just looks like trash, you can thank the defensive tackles for that because they're not getting moved off their spot, and it helps to have. Again, very much like center guard, 6'2", 6'3", 300-pound guys, right? You don't want them 6'7", 6'8", you don't want them that tall. You want them to have a low center of gravity, get under your pads, right? Because when I'm here with my hands, not to get into the whole deal of it, I get excited. But I get my hands in the pads, and now all of a sudden, as an offensive lineman, I can't see in front of me, right? Now I'm trying to lock out here. I can't see because my shoulder pads are in my chin, my head is up, and now as a defensive tackle, I can lock you out, and I can maneuver you basically where I want you, and I can direct my linebackers essentially just like a running and a guard would direct his running back, right? Find the gap, fill the hole. So it's they don't get the credit they deserve at defensive tackle unless you're, I don't know. What's the guy from the Rams? Aaron Donald, right? One of the greatest of all time at any position. But apart from him, there's nobody that's going to super stand out because that position isn't built that way.
Yeah.
It's not a glorified position, if that makes sense.
Before you should have told me you were going to do that because I would have played this clip before you did that.
That was a semi breakdown.
It was a breakdown. It was fantastic, man. No, that's awesome. That's the stuff that some people don't really know. I think most of the guys here know a good amount of it, but I'm hearing stuff that I didn't know right before then. So no, we always appreciate that and that aspect that you bring to the show. Guys, anybody else want to say anything about the D tackles before we move on to a sexier position here?
I will say Jamie Sheriff is going to make an NFL team. He might not. He isn't going to get drafted, but he's going to be in the Jalen Wayne type situation where he's going to be on a team, just not one of the main guys that you're going to think of. He's a little bit on the smaller side, but he is an absolute dog.
Well, the cool thing about all of this that we're doing is a lot of these guys that we're talking about, you're going to hear their name 2 and 3 years from now, 3 and 4 years from now. Like a Jalen Tolbert, right? You didn't know he was in the draft, right? Most people who are just casual football fans or not fans of the Sun Belt Conference or really, group of 5 schools in general.
Yeah.
But you're going to hear some of these names and you're going to remember we had this conversation, right? I told you he was a dog. I told you he was going to be able to play. And you're going to remember that. You're going to give yourself a little pat on the back because, these are the kinds of things that people don't realize is that a lot of you – look at Shannon Sharp, second or third greatest tight end in the history of the world. And he went to a little old school down in South Georgia, So a lot of you guys that end up being the great ones, they come from Sweetness, right? Went to Jackson State?
Yeah.
Brett Favre coming from Southern Miss. You're going to hear about some of these guys. I can guarantee it.
Yep. We got a wide receiver from Marshall that no one had heard about before. No.
Yeah.
His story is a little different because he was at was he at Pitt? Where was he at before? Was it West Virginia?
West Virginia. You talking about Randy Moss?
Yeah, Randy Moss. Yeah,
he was at West Virginia and then got in some nonsense and then ended up having to go to Marshall.
No, he was Notre Dame and Florida State, though, wasn't he?
Was it Notre Dame and Florida State?
He had been recruited. Did he commit to those, or did he?
I thought he had gotten into trouble at Notre Dame and then had to go to Florida State and then got into trouble there and then went to Marshall.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. West Virginia doesn't sound right, but I could be wrong. And
I don't know. And maybe I'm just associating West Virginia with the fact that he's from West Virginia. And maybe that's where the confusion is. I don't know particularly. All I know is that, he came over to Boone and, put up a measly 190 some passing or receiving yards and 3 touchdowns in 3 quarters. Didn't even play the 4th quarter.
Jeez. Crazy. Yeah, this is another name that I do remember hearing. Jamie Collins for Southern Miss went under the radar as well. It's not to say again, this is somebody else's list. I didn't put it all together myself. I stole it, but it was better put together than I would have done. I'll tell you that. Somebody who has some kind of data that's going to give these guys some sort of ranking. But yeah, a question we may get to later from Benjamin. I know this is off topic for the show. Thoughts on one of the top Sunbelt scorers transferring from A-State to Louisiana? That's Kobe Julian. That's basketball talk. So we probably won't get to it in this show, actually. But, yeah, an interesting aspect within the Sunbelt as far as storylines goes. Now, the sexier position, the linebacking core. Jontre Hunter from Georgia State. You can just see, I mean, if pictures give you 1,000 words, right? A picture is worth 1,000 words, I guess I should say.
He looks like a man.
Yeah.
Yeah. He looks like he's going to be in the NFL for sure.
Right.
And he is a projected 7th possible free agent pickup. But again, once you get into those, it wouldn't shock anybody if he goes, 5th or 6th because of certain positions being grabbed before him or something like that. But this guy's from Georgia State and definitely a name you heard throughout the season this year and stayed that way. Luckily, he stayed healthy. But he went to the combine. Let me pull up his combine stuff and let you guys speak about anything you want to say. Didn't do all of the drills. Looks like he did the vertical, had a 32-inch vertical and a broad jump of 9'3", which, again, tells you how impressive Solomon is when he's a 9'11", and a 37-inch vertical. But anyway,
I was going to say, he's not super explosive, but as an inside backer, dude, I don't really care. I don't need him to be.
Yeah.
I need him to be able to run 3 to 4 yards and stuff a hole.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we've got some of the other guys listed here. Swayze Bowman, Andrew Parker Jr. from App State, a name that TJ and I are very familiar with. Keyshawn Brown from Marshall, who actually transferred to Marshall from App State. Eli Neal, also from Marshall. Brian Holloway, definitely a name I heard throughout the season for Texas State. Quentin Wilfon from South Alabama. JC is probably going to tell us plenty about him. Cadre Jackson from Georgia Southern, and Jasper Williams from Louisiana. A lot of love spread out throughout the Sun Belt as far as the linebacking core is concerned. JC, go ahead and start telling us a little bit about Quentin Wilfon and what you saw out of him this season, or for his career, I guess, really.
Well, the linebackers are where I've kind of figured South was going to run away with the list, because we had looking at it right here, we had Quentin Williams, Quentin Wilfon, and we had Trey Kaiser, which were all absolute monsters, and they're all gone now. So our defense is going to take a little bit of step back, but Wilfon alone, I'm trying to see what his actual numbers was, but I know they were up there for the Sun Belt specifically. But he's very, very deserving of a NFL spot.
Nice.
Compared to a lot of other.
Yeah. Dominic, any thoughts on the some of the linebackers you see here listed, or anybody that you had specifically run across in any of your research so far?
I mean, I'm just talking about thinking about Hunter. I mean, the eyes tell the story for me. I think back to like the old school, like Mike Singletary days with that intense stare where he's just looking for someone to hit. And he seemed fearless. I mean, didn't really like shy away from those like bigger blockers, just engaged and went to work, So if I were picking, those are the kind of guys that I would want on my team.
Absolutely. TJ, any thoughts on any of these guys? Actually, just doesn't have to be Hunter, or it could be specifically him.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew Parker, absolutely stood out at his pro day at App State. I mean, he bench pressed 20 times, 225, 10-4 broad jump. Wow. And which is insanely explosive. For relativity, mine was a 10-2. And I play slot receiver. So, tight. His 3 cone drill, 4.26, 38.5-inch vertical, right? These are all super, super explosive. What it tells me is that he can play outside linebacker as well as inside linebacker, and he can cover those slot guys, and he probably can cover your tight end as well at 6'2.5", 235 pounds. So He's making a name for himself in terms of versatility. 51 solo tackles, 2 sacks. He's not a rush your quarterback type of linebacker, but he can certainly get back there on some schemes, and it's something that can be taught, right? But I think where his value is going to be mostly, concerned is being able to cover backs out of the backfield. With his ability to be explosive, like manning that short zone area of the field, right? And being able to sort of muddy up the coverage a bit for the quarterback in that short to intermediate route exchange, right? So you're talking 5 to 15 yards, drop depth, those kinds of things, being able to get in and out of breaks and chase down tackles. He's super explosive. I mean, I can't even express to you how, 10-6 broad jump or 10-4 broad jump. I can't express to you how explosive that is.
Yeah, that's crazy. At a 16-ounce lounge, one of our resident Southern Miss fans, was saying Swayze went off during their pro day. He had a broad jump of 10-11 as well. I think that's what you said. It's just insane.
That's insane.
Vertical jump of 36 inches, 220. The bench press, he had 24 reps. All this stuff is crazy. These guys are showing out on pro days. So that'll cover the linebackers. Again, we'll go over this real quick. Hunter is really the only one that looks like a kind of surefire NFL possible draft pick. Bozeman is the second ranked, and Andrew Parker is right after him. So real close there. Keyshawn Brown also listed there, and then a little bit of a drop off with all the rest. But all of them are in the top 200. I don't know. That's a lot of players.
You got to think each team is carrying 6 linebackers.
Mm-hmm. So that's true. Yeah,
that's a lot of roster spots, right? 32 times 6. I don't know the math off the top of my head, but it's a lot.
Yeah, very true. All right, cornerbacks, another laundry list position for the Sun Belt, and the top one, as far as most people are concerned, is Mika Abrahams over at Marshall, which isn't hard to see. In the name, again, you saw it specifically where you really blew up his name a little bit was at the Notre Dame game, obviously, that they pulled off the shocking upset just 2 years ago. And he had at least one pick six. I don't know if he had another interception or if he had a second. I don't think there was enough points scored for him to have 2 pick sixes, but I think he had 2 picks in that game. And one was a pick six, I believe. Then we've got, and he's listed here as a projected free agent. Even the top guys at this list are both listed as projected free agents. Tyreek Funderburk from App State being the other one, who I believe transferred in from Richmond. I think that's where he came in from. And then we've got a laundry list, like I said. Caleb Ford Dement from Texas State. Reddy Stewart, actually, I was surprised he wasn't a little higher on this list from Troy, because that guy went off all season last year, had a pretty good season again this year. Keontae Lusk from Coastal Carolina. I'll probably stop going through all the names. Call out anybody you guys want to bring a little bit of a focus to, or anybody you guys want to speak about specifically with the cornerbacks here.
Tyreek stood out to me a lot this year. You and I, obviously, App State fans, we watched him. His interceptions, there were only 4 still a lot. It's not indicative of how well he played the position, right? Most quarterbacks did not want to throw in his direction for fear of interceptions. He was good in man-to-man. He didn't press as much as I'd like him to, but it's not his fault. That's that's a product of the type of defense that we run, which I've told you millions of times I don't like. I despise that, because you've given up an 8-yard cushion. If I was an offensive coordinator for the other team, I'd just 5-yard stop us to death, because if you're giving me 8 yards, you're giving me an 8-yard cushion every time. Anyway, I don't want to get into that, but that pissed me off a whole lot.
You know which team did that, and it just blew us away? When Miami, you remember the Miami game when they came to Boone? The first Power 5 program?
I was sick to my stomach. I'm sick. It's making me crazy, because I'm sitting and I'm like, you're not even going to try to attempt to press this guy? They're running 5-yard stops. He's running a 5-yard stop. I can tell you before the play starts, he's going to run a 5-yard stop. Because why wouldn't I? You're giving me 8-10 yards every time 2 of those is a first down. I'm going to keep doing that until I get to the end zone.
Yep.
And then it's too late. So anyway, again, sorry, don't.
Thanks,
It's a sore
Mark.
spot for me.
You ruined my Saturday that day.
Oh my God, ruined a lot of things that day. But no, back to Tyreek. He plays the position very well. I think he has great hips. Right, he turns and runs with the receiver, and he plays eyes to the ball instead of playing the defender. Right, and that'll get you a lot of pass breakups, and it'll make the ref put the flag back in his pocket. Right, because what ends up happening is if I can see your head go up and I can see your eyes on the football, I know you're playing through the ball and not through the receiver. And so that'll eliminate a lot of and that's why he wasn't very penalized this year, was because he played to the football. And so I think as much as he probably won't get drafted, I think he has a draftable skill set, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think he certainly has the tangibles that you look for in a lot of corners. 6 foot and 185 also helps.
Yeah, doesn't hurt.
That's for sure.
Dominic, any thoughts here on the corners or anything?
Oh, gosh. I mean, like, to kind of counter TJ, what stood out to me with Funderburk was his yards after catch that he allowed. I mean, it seemed like he like we had the gunslinger quarterback. He almost seemed like the gunslinger mentality for wanting to make the play rather than just make the tackle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably where he'll get dinged.
Yep.
Going to the next level. You know, I think he had 126 yards after the catch.
Yeah.
Just last year alone.
Yeah. Trayvon Diggs, Dallas Cowboys, same way. He's a big play or it's a touchdown. Right. And as a Cowboys fan, I hate it because I know he's going to get me eight interceptions a year, but I also know he's going to give up, 8 touchdowns. Yeah. So pick your poison.
And then like Abraham kind of stood out with his numbers his last 3 seasons where he had 39 pass breakups, which spoke to, at least for me, it spoke to his instincts and his timing to just at least get his hands up to disrupt those passes,
Oh, yeah.
I always make the joke when cornerbacks have a lot of pass breakups, they can't catch.
I don't need them to catch. I need them to get the other team not to catch.
True. It's true. It's true. JC, any thoughts here on the corners?
I'm gonna sound more like a Troy fan than a South fan, and I hate it. I might have to wash my mouth out. Stewart for Troy. 4 interceptions, 38 solo tackles, and 10 pass breakups, and could have had almost doubled that if quarterbacks would have had time to throw it instead of Solomon getting to him and
right. That's true.
But I mean, in coverage, he looks as good as almost anybody. And getting to the quarterback too. They put him on pressures a lot too, and he's good there. But that's the last Troy guy I talk about. I swear.
Yeah, I'll tell you what impressed me the most watching Reddy over the last 2 seasons. Again, I'm not watching him every single week in and out, but when I did see him and see pass breakups and tackles that he made, his timing is impeccable. He never ever gets there early. It's always right when the ball's being caught, or he's got the hand in front, so that's not even all that close. It's just a timing thing with him. He's just got the break. TJ, I remember Corey Lynch. I actually don't think Corey wasn't a corner though, was he?
No, Corey played. Corey could have played whatever the hell he wanted to, but he played safety for us.
Okay, but he has that intangible that Corey had, which was the vision, because Corey wasn't fast.
No.
But he just and Reddy's the same way. He's reading the play as it's happening, and he knows exactly what's about to happen. It doesn't seem like he's caught off guard too often. So to me, Reddy is ready for the NFL. Haha, dad joke. But no, I seriously think that I think those top 3 or 4 guys really do stand a chance to maybe not get drafted, okay, but definitely to make an NFL team, or at least have a chance to make an NFL team. Everybody below that, I'll be honest, I don't know if I see it, but those top 3 or 4, I feel pretty comfortable in because of how we saw them play throughout their college careers here in the Sun Belt. Okay, in a very similar position here, the safety position, Jay Stanley is the one pictured here from Southern Miss. We've also got Clayton Isbell from Coastal Carolina, Del Pettis from Troy, Ershad Davis from Troy. Guess what? Another Troy player, Carlos Crawford from Troy. Maybe a reason that Troy won the damn championship is because they had half the roster becoming possible pro prospects.
Yeah, that might be it.
Yeah, and then there's E.J. Jackson from App State, Joshua Madison from Coastal Carolina, Q Reed from JMU, Nick Ross from App State. So there's a couple App State and JMU guys here as we get closer to the bottom of the list. Josh Surratt, who's not related to the Surratt that played at UNC. I think we did check on that at one point throughout the season. But an interesting name because the namesake was familiar to some of us who'd seen UNC Tar Heels play a number of times. Any names jumping off the board to you, or the fact that Troy has 3 guys in the top 4 players listed here a big deal to you guys?
Yeah, I think them having 3 in the top 4 says a lot about, like you talked about, their entire defense as a whole. And then also, too, I'm impressed with the fact that they have 3, right? Which means a lot of the coverages that they ran, they played nickel, which is not a coverage that a lot of college football teams run because they want to be traditional, because college football is so centered around the running back. Obviously, you've got, some quarterbacks that light it up, but generally speaking, a college program is built around how well you can run the football. And so playing with 2 linebackers instead of 3 says a lot about your trust in that third safety, meaning he can come down and and play in the run game as well as defend the pass. And I think that is what made Troy stand out, is because their ability to be multiple on defense. And when you have the ability to be multiple on defense, then all of a sudden you sub a third linebacker in there on third down or third and short or whatever, rundown situation. Now you've put the offense in a predicament because they prepare for 3 safeties or 5 DBs. So it's one of those situations where I think that helped Troy last year be multiple and be successful in their approach to going really winning it all.
Yeah. Okay, JC, you said you wouldn't talk about Troy anymore.
I did it for you. So
yeah,
don't worry.
TJ took care of that. So now we'll let you go. You could expand on any particular player other than those guys, or just talk about whatever you want to talk about. Unfortunately for you, there is no South Alabama safety listed on this sheet.
Yeah,
maybe there's one that's lower that you want to talk about. And if not, that's okay too. We'll have Dominic go. I think we just lost JC, but if you're still there, let us know. Screen's black.
Well, I'm here, but I'm probably gonna jump on out of here. Thanks for having me. I'm start.
All good, man. Yeah, we appreciate it. All right, Dominic. All right, see you, man. Dominic will oops. I removed you from stage, TJ, because he jumped off right when I was going to click him off. Now we got you back. No worries here. All right. Let's go this way here. Now that there's 3 of us.
And I mean, kind of to piggyback off of TJ's and your points earlier, I mean, yeah, Troy has 3 there, but I'm curious to see what they would do if they didn't have like a Solomon and a Jimenor going at the quarterback, I mean, even if they're not the greatest in coverage, if they're only having to cover for a second or so.
Exactly.
Yeah. They don't have bad statistics when you've got so much pressure otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So
got less than 3 seconds. It makes it real easy to pass defense.
Yep.
Yeah. Certainly does. Let's see if we can do another different layout here. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do at all. There we go. All right. I like that one. So at this point, let's just freestyle. So we've gone over pretty much all the honestly, there was a position group that I realized I kind of skipped over, which is the fullback, which
we're good.
I don't even have all the names listed in front of me, but that is one of those interesting ones where you do see some of the smaller college guys across the board get taken at that position, right? Because it isn't used across the board as much as it used to be, right? Fullback used to be an incredibly important position because all teams did was run the ball back in the day.
Yeah, ask Daryl Johnston for the Dallas Cowboys back in the 90s.
Yep.
Yeah.
Raymond Smith.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think that it's impossible to get a guy drafted at a fullback position, but I don't know how many teams in the Sun Belt really truly list a guy at the fullback position either. That's why.
Well, and also I don't know how many people in general use a fullback. Like most teams, and Dominic, you can correct me if I'm wrong, having, being as much work as you do in the draft, most teams use their tight ends, right? As an H-back sort of lead blocker. I know, most football teams carry at least 3 tight ends for that specific reason, right? One's a blocker, maybe the other 2 are receivers, and then they kind of interchange them. Unless you're, Rob Gronkowski and can do it all. Generally speaking, they draft them to do different things. So I think the last fullback I remember was Neal for the Chargers. And this was, I think, back in 2008, 2009 when he was blocking for LaDainian Tomlinson.
Yeah.
That's the last true fullback I remember.
You don't remember Mike Allstott? He was probably before that.
No, he was after, but I consider Mike Allstott running back.
Yeah.
Was he ever listed as a fullback, or was he always listed as a running back?
I think he was a running back. Hey, Mike Allstott, man, he had a lot of freaking rushing yards.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a tank. I mean, he was built like a fullback.
I remember hearing like his workout stories where he'd be pushing a Jeep around the parking lot of the stadium.
With guys in the Jeep, probably.
More than likely, I mean, at the NFL level, I can only think of 3 that have a fullback with the Niners. I want to say the Ravens, and I think the Dolphins still have one, but I'm not 100% sure on the Dolphins.
You said the Ravens?
Yeah.
I don't know who that is. I know Juszczyk for
Niners.
For the Niners.
Yeah.
Well, I guess
Richard, I believe is his last name, on the Ravens.
Dominic, you have a NFL team that's like your tried and true, like favorite, or not really?
The first game I watched was the Bears Super Bowl against the Patriots. Or at least that I remember watching. So they've always been kind of up there on the list. And then when I used to live down in South Florida, I actually used to work for the Dolphins. So I would cheer for them. But as I got more into scouting and more into player evaluation, I used them more as like a case study rather than like why'd we sign this guy to this contract, or why'd we draft this guy instead of this guy? You know what I mean?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Did you find out who we're talking about, TJ?
I did not, but I did discover this, Jim. There are 24 active fullbacks in the NFL as of 2023. 24. Wow. I would have never guessed that.
On active roster fullbacks,
active
not like
roster right now. There are only 24. It says only 24 is a lot. 24 active fullbacks in the NFL heading into the 2023 season. So this was based off last year.
Okay.
That is.
I was thinking of Patrick Ricard, by the way, on the Ravens.
Yeah.
I've heard the name, so I'm vaguely familiar with the name.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if you had a pro team that you really stick to. I'll tell you, we know TJ's is the Cowboys. I'm up in the air on mine. I'm literally listed all of my Panthers gear for sale. No one will buy it, by the way, if that is of interest to anyone. I haven't even got it like, hey, this is worthless, but I'll give you $20. You know?
Yeah, I think everybody's good.
Just do what what's his name did from Oregon State when he went to Michigan State and give it all to Goodwill.
Oh, it pains me that like some of it is in really good shape, and I think like people would want it, but maybe not. I guess I will have to give most of it away. But I was asking that because I didn't know what some of your thoughts were specifically for the two of you. Now that we've talked about the Sun Belt, kind of freestyle, if you want to, your NFL thoughts on as far as like what your team might do, or in Dominic's case, you've been going over draft boards for weeks and weeks at a time. Anything that you think could be a surprise. I know you guys did some trades this week on the show, heavy trades. That some of them were crazy, I think. Like you said, I agreed with you on the overpayment one that they were talking about at one point. He's giving half his NFL draft in the future away for like one pick. But anything you think it might happen that's kind of out there, or TJ specifically, anything you think the Cowboys will go after, or anybody you think the Cowboys might go after specifically?
So I don't know if you talked about the Cowboys. We better do something because we didn't do anything in free agency. So that pissed me off. So that's thing one. I mean, right now we need to rebuild our offensive line. I mean, we certainly need a left tackle. I do think that our left guard, what is his name? Oh God, Tyron Smith, or not Tyron Smith, the other Smith, the youngest one. I think he's going to be really good, but I mean, we need help at right and left tackle. We need help at the other guard position. So there's some holes there. We need a running back. I mean, we can't go into the seat right now. We have Rico Dowdle and what's the small kid? His dad's on the Deuce Vaughn. We can't go into the season with those two as our running backs. I mean, we just signed a guy out of
Royce Freeman, right?
Right, yeah, Royce Freeman. I mean, okay, right? I mean, I'm not. That doesn't move the needle for me. Defensively, I think we're fine at defensive back and linebacker. We need to get bigger at linebacker, that's for sure. And we need a hoss at defensive tackle. We got a lot of holes, man. We got a lot of holes. Our receiver position, I'm not terribly concerned about. I don't know what we're going to do with Dak after this year. There's a rumor going around that we'll let Dak run it out, right? Not extend him, and then next year draft Shedeur Sanders. I don't know how true that is, but I don't know if I even like it. I'll have to see a lot from him this year to make me think that that's a viable option. Anyway, there's a lot that the Cowboys need to do to make me not mad anymore.
Dominic, anything that you think the Cowboys should or could do, and then anything else off the top of your head that you want to speak to?
Kind of like what TJ mentioned, that the offensive line is probably where they're going to have to look at hard in that first round, whether it be a center or, like we were saying, someone who can kind of flip-flop between center and guard just to shore up that line, As much as I like Jalen Tolbert,
he's not the answer for your third receiver. No.
Yeah. So our Dallas Cowboys fans and company really high on Brandon Cooks being that number 2?
Well, here's the thing. It's either him or do you keep Michael Gallup? And Michael Gallup played – well, he didn't play awful last year.
Well, Gallup's already gone, actually.
Gallup is already gone.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know he was already gone yet. So, I don't know that Jalen Tolbert is a viable 3 for sure. And then I don't know how Brandon Cooks played well. I think the first couple games he wasn't ingratiated with the offense enough because he came late, right? So I think with a season with Dak and with CD, with an off season with them, I think he can learn a little bit more and be a little bit more of a threat. But we need a third guy.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't know that Tolbert is the long term. I mean, if we go 4 and 5 wide, obviously I want Tolbert in the game. He's a big, strong target, but he's not somebody that I consistently want as my 3.
Yeah, I mean, he's been dropping lately, but maybe adding CD's cousin in that second round.
Yeah.
That'd be a big body receiver. Florida State.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Keon Coleman.
Yeah.
That'd be like a big-bodied receiver that could kind of shore up that short to medium game
Yep.
area. and then have CD kind of help take the top off, and even Tolbert, because Tolbert's kind of fast though, isn't he?
Tolbert is fast. Tolbert is he runs a 4.4 and he's 6'2.5", 6'3".
Yeah.
He's a big guy, and I mean, and obviously CD Lamb's fast. So we need that short to intermediate.
He had that kind of like complementary system of receivers, where they're not all like cookie cutters.
Sure.
But outside of those, ironically, the Cowboys are one of the teams with the fullback because they have Hunter Lepke out of North Dakota State.
We don't ever play him.
Yeah.
We don't ever play. I mean, he gets the ball on like 4th and 1.
Yeah.
Other than that, like he's never in the game. I mean, we have Schoonmaker, who was the rookie last year at tight end. He plays more fullback than Lepke.
Interesting. Yeah, that does seem like a position that just naturally like overtakes it, right? Like just pull your tight end in and have him act as a fullback, but you don't have to have a fullback on your active roster. Anyway, sorry.
Not unless he can catch. Then he becomes your H-back and not fullback.
True.
Yeah. Well, and that speaks to our other point where like the more versatile you are, and the more things you can do, the better value or the higher value grade you have for a team,
Makes sense. Anything else that you think might be surprise, Dominic? Anything like backdoor rumors you're hearing about, like a trade at the top somewhere or anything like that?
I've heard trades from everyone from like the Patriots on down. So, I mean, rumors are rumors. Those get filed into like, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah. Well, and there's going to be high rumor rate now. The rumor mill is I mean, everybody's lying because they want their pick.
Yeah, because they want to muddy the water and see what happens. I mean, if I were the Patriots, I would trade down because they're just a train wreck right now. They're not
it's a total rebuild. Yeah,
they're not that one person away. No.
Well, so okay, and I get that, and I understand that logic.
Mm-hmm.
So then that to me means you don't place as high value on Drake May as I guess as the other pro scouts do, because here's my thinking.
Mm-hmm.
If I know that there's obviously nobody's Patrick Mahomes, but I'm just using him as an example.
Mm-hmm.
If I know there's a Patrick, I'm taking him. I don't care what my team looks like. I'm taking him. That said, if I don't because you've got USC, what's his name, and then Jaden.
Caleb Williams.
Yeah, Caleb Williams and then Jaden. Right,
Mm-hmm.
Those are two surefire we know are going to do really well. I think had it not been for injury, Michael Penix would be a lot higher. That's my pick. He's actually, in my opinion, he has the best arm of anybody in the draft, any quarterback in the draft. But I'll leave that aside. So you're saying, from a Patriots perspective, they might not take him, or they might not view him as high enough that he either may fall, or he's not high enough to where I would mortgage the rest of my team to not have a quarterback.
I mean, what concerns me with May is that his stats went down his second year starting.
Yeah.
And is that like the players around him, or is that teams finally getting film on him and figuring out how to stop him?
Well, see, and so then that brings about another question, because I don't care how much film you have on Patrick Mahomes, he's still Patrick Mahomes. So then I guess going back to my initial question, is he just not that good? Is he not good enough to place a number 3 overall pick on?
I wouldn't. I mean, I like on one of the, not College Football Dogs, but one of the other sites that I write for, I listed my top quarterbacks, and I actually had Daniels, Penix, and then Williams as my top 3. And I had May at, I want to say 6 or 7, just because to me he feels not for off the field stuff or anything, but just I don't feel like he's going to pan out. He gives me more of like a Johnny Manziel kind of vibe.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's interesting. So I mean, obviously I watch a lot of SportsCenter. And I follow a lot of these draft boards on the internet, and that's the first I've heard of that perspective as it relates to Drake. Man, most everybody's high on him. I personally, what's the quarterback out of Duke that's with the Giants?
Daniel Jones.
Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones and Drake May are mirror images of each other. Like very, very athletic and can have uber arm talent, can put the ball anywhere, but just they don't have that next thing that put that. Yeah. So I say it's interesting because I kind of am of the mindset that you are. I don't like Drake. I'm not in love with Drake May. Yeah. I think he certainly has talent, but he's not a Jaden Daniels.
Yep.
He's not a Caleb Williams, and he's not a Michael Penix. And I despise Bo Nix. Dominic, you know how I feel about Bo Nix. Can't stand Bo Nix, and I don't think that J.J. McCarthy played enough to show me that he's a top 10 overall pick.
No.
Yeah.
So
I'm shocked that JJ's like jumped up draft boards all of a sudden. Not all of a sudden. I know it's been kind of since the championship, but I don't know. I'll say this on Drake May. I was very impressed with him over the first few seasons, but he's just kind of – it's like you said, when these teams seem to have figured him out, he's kind of just tailored off. Also, UNC traditionally underperforms, so that's an aspect that's not just on Drake May. That's the team historically. You know, they start hot and they always cool, and then they just dwindle towards the end of the season.
But even going – and – to that point, I mean, they were expected as one of the ACC top dogs in this past year, and they kind of just
with Clemson having a down year, they were expected to win it. And didn't.
Yeah, and Drake May was actually listed as a pretty high up Heisman hopeful for much of the preseason and into the first week or two of the season, and then you didn't hear his name at all after the first, probably even the third or fourth week. You stopped really hearing it already.
Yeah, but see, and that goes back to my point. Like, I don't care how much film you have on Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels or Michael Penix, they still put up numbers.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, the film didn't matter because they were going to suit. There's some people that are just better when the moment calls for them to be better, and Drake May was not that.
Yeah.
No.
Neither was Bo Nix. I mean, you know, I don't know. There's some guys that have it, and you know, J.J. McCarthy, I think he threw the ball on average 17 times a game. That's not enough for me to say he's my guy. You know what I mean? Like Blake Corum was the star of their offense.
Yeah.
Of Michigan's offense. So I'm not impressed with J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, McCarthy was just more game manager, you know?
Yeah. He was a don't mess it up guy.
Yeah. He wasn't going to cost you the game, but he wasn't going to put the team on his back and will it to win kind of thing, you know?
I think the only time he did it was last year against Illinois. I don't care about that.
But he wasn't really asked to. So, I mean, I wouldn't pick him. Like, I don't agree with him being in that consideration for a top 10 pick.
Right.
But there's stuff to work with. You know, it's not like I'm not saying I don't think he's a bad quarterback or anything by any stretch of the imagination, but I wouldn't have him in a top 10 kind of consideration.
Yeah.
No, to me, I have a second round grade on him. And that's just not that my grade matters, but I have a second round grade on him, and I have a fourth round grade on Bo Nix.
I want both your opinions on this. Doesn't the quarterback position all of a sudden become way overvalued the closer you get to the draft? Like 100%. There wasn't nearly that many quarterbacks near the top of the draft board to start the season off with, and now they're littered in the first 10 picks, and you're like, there's no way 6 guys are going to be taken in the first 10 picks or whatever the hell it is now.
Position inherently is overvalued.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, look how many teams pick them early and then have to rebuild however many years down the road, you know?
Yeah. 49ers got lucky. Yeah. They mortgaged their whole future on a quarterback that is now a backup for the Cowboys and ended up getting Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy, who in my opinion still is, I mean, he's a J.J. McCarthy to me. I mean, they don't need him to do a lot. You know, he just manages the offense. I mean, he makes some throws because you're in the NFL and you're supposed to be able to make some throws, right? But he doesn't wow me. He never has.
Yeah. I guess that's true. All right, guys. I think unless you guys have anything else specific to the draft or the Sunbelt aspect of things, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for tonight. We had a good 2.5 hour long show. Man, we really went through it tonight.
Yeah. That's awesome. I had a good time. Nice to be back. Good show to be back for. How about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad we had some national columnists who knew what they were talking about coming on and sharing their thoughts on some of these position players. And
I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you're welcome at any time, man. Because as you said, you're doing research all the time. So we always
I'm already
know.
working on 2025. So,
jeez,
imagine that.
Yep.
Craziness. All right, gentlemen. Well, enjoy your evening. Again, Dano's Seasoning, Doggos at checkout. Keep your eye on collegefootballdogs.com. You'll see Dominic all over that thing. I'm going to start writing some more once baseball season ends. I'm trying to do like the double dip and stuff. It's hard to keep up with podcasts and writing at the same time. I need to just do like one. But anyway.
Something to be said for that.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, enjoy the rest of everyone's evening. And if you're listening to this later, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.